Chapter 534. Only then did they understand that the painting had been smeared with knockout powder. As the Taoist priest lightly flicked the powder in his fingernail, the knockout powder would be released. This kind of despicable method was really a disgrace to cultivators. Looking at his expression again, it was obvious that he was extremely pleased. Although the fellow Taoist priest who was familiar with him disdained to talk to mortals, he also revealed a gratified expression. The silver-robed Taoist seemed to have thought of something. He turned the painting and tilted it towards River Styx. River Styx felt a weak wave of a spell coming towards him. This illusion spell could not even touch his hair. Using his mana, he analyzed it and found out that it was an illusion of countless beautiful women taking off their clothes. It seemed like the Taoist wanted him to take revenge. River Styx did not know how brave this person was. There was a saying that there would never be a good banquet. How dare he hold a banquet in front of Chenong? The Mermaid King's guests were all dead, and he was chased off the throne. Elder Bayan's entire family was bathed in the celestial light and was sent to become immortals by River Styx. Unfortunately, the 5 Lascivists met River Styx's clone. The heretical cultivators who attended the banquet were thrown into the celestial demon painting to suffer. Putting aside how unwise the father and son of the Wu family were to provoke such a calamity, the silver-robed Taoist priest was also a first-rate hero. He actually dared to challenge the old demon Styx River, who had killed countless people and was known for his demonic prowess, to make him take off his clothes and fight. Just this point alone was enough to prove that the calamity was upon him and he could not be saved. The 3 elites of Qilu had also consumed Chun Ang's spiritual pills. Their wisdom and mana were many times stronger than the silver-robed Taoist. Not to mention this knockout powder, even if it was the demon sex knockout powder or normal heretical illusions, as long as it was not the heart demon technique, the 3 of them would not be afraid of the mystic orthodox sect. As for River Styx, he was the ancestor of this technique. He was in charge of the sky demon technique and was the leader of the mystic orthodox sect, which was even more powerful than the Red Body sect and Shura Palace. Only someone who had the guts to cast an illusion on him would be tired of living. As a result, most of the guests in the hall were in a daze and only snapped out of it after a while. While they were sighing at the boundless power of the immortals and their remarkable abilities, the 4 of them were calm and collected as they looked at the silver-robed Taoist with a smile. He could only force out his magic power. Even though he was sweating profusely, it was useless. Boundless supernatural power and remarkable abilities were quite suitable to be used on Chun Ong of the Underworld River. However, this third-rate heretical person was actually able to use it. He was really blind, a foolish and laughable person. At this time, some people had already sensed that something was wrong. They looked at the Taoist priest in their hearts, who was sweating profusely and panicking, while the 4 people on the other side were all calm and relaxed. How could they not understand that something had gone wrong with the Taoist priest's magic? After a short while, the silver-robed Taoist saw that he still couldn't deal with it. He couldn't help but fly into a rage out of humiliation and shouted, "Demon, how dare you fool your grandfather?" He patted the sword pouch on his waist, and a sharp sword gleam flew out. This sword gleam was different from the flying sword gleam of a sword celestial like Chenong. It was a divine weapon from the mortal world that was polished and reflected a cold gleam. In other words, the sword that was shot out from the Taoist's waist was a bag of treasured swords. Such a swordsmanship could not even be considered as third-rate Taoist swordsmanship. It could only be said to be controlling objects and using telekinesis to control a treasured sword. It was not like flying swords that were purified and spiritualized. How could this kind of method of using flying swords as hidden weapons threaten Zhou Chun? Moreover, the silver-robed Taoist intentionally used his swordsmanship to make it look more powerful in order to win back the people's hearts. Zhou Chun was someone who had faced Long Fei's 9-9 Yin spirit sword before. When he saw these 2 different sword gleams, he couldn't help but sneer. The hidden weapons in his hands shot out like a string of thunderbolts. The thunderbolts were made of firefly magnetic stones and they quickly attached to the flying swords. He then took out a magnetic mirror with the opposite of yin and yang to shine it on the flying swords. The flying swords were forced by the magnetic force and couldn't even get close. Two of the stone beads that didn't have magnetic force struck the silver-robed Taoist body with a strong wind, breaking his elbows. This time, it was the silver-robed Taoist turn to roll on the ground and wail in pain. He was even more miserable than Elder Natai. Everyone was shocked and only regained their senses after a few breaths. At this moment, someone said, "Where's Elder Natai?" Elder Natai ran away. It turned out that at some point, Elder Natai saw that something was wrong and sneaked away while no one was paying attention. The silver-robed Taoist was embarrassed and angry. In addition to the pain in his arms, he couldn't take out any medicinal pills. He was so angry that he fainted. Another Taoist at the side saw this and panicked. He shouted, "Junior brother!" He went up to feed him spiritual pills and set his bones back in place. Then, he looked at River Styx and the others and shouted, "How dare you hurt my junior brother? No one in the 9 heavens and 10 earths can save you. Die for me." The flying sword on his back came out of its scabbard. This time it was a real sword gleam. Even though it was mixed and dim, it was not ordinary. It was obvious that his magic power was far stronger than his junior brother's. His junior brother came back to his senses and endured the pain. He said fiercely, "Senior brother, don't leave their bodies intact. The 3 elites of Qilu and Lu, right? When I find your family, I'll make them suffer 100 times more. Your children will wait for me to break their limbs and make them beg for death." At this time, even someone as calm as Li Ning could not help but be furious. He had a daughter who was only 2 or 3 years old. She was Amei's Longbrow Junrin's former mistress, the reincarnation of the 9 heavens demoness Chen Ziqin. She was also River Styx and Chun Ang's disciple's grand disciple, and the future leader of Amei's 3 heroes and 2 clouds. With a single sentence, this person had offended the 2 strongest powers in this realm. He was even more tyrannical than those devils from West Kunlun. He was ignorant and fearless to the extreme. River Styx almost laughed when he heard this. He took out a scroll from his sleeve and placed it in front of them again. He slowly unfolded it and said, "You showed me the nature picture of all beings. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Why don't you take a look at my nature picture of hell? Evaluate me." How could the 2 unorthodox disciples listen to these words? They were bent on killing the 3 heroes of Qilu. They only hated that they did not die too early and that they would be tortured. However, as River Styx's celestial demon picture slowly unfolded, the 2 of them suddenly fell into a world of countless celestial demons. They fell into the 9 heavens and 10 earths, falling into the 10 hells. In the eyes of the bystanders, they were stunned for a moment. Then, their essence chi slowly dissipated. Their flesh and blood fell off their bodies, turning them into dried corpses and white bones. Slowly, even the white bones melted away. In the outside world, it was only a moment. In the celestial demon picture, they had been tortured for countless years and their souls had become crazy. A Taoist body had used up all its essence chi and withered into mud. At this time, the crowd realized that there was such a terrifying person in the hall. They were all inexplicably terrified. River Styx slowly kept the celestial demon picture and looked at the 3 heroes of Qilu. He sighed and said, "Back then, your master and I were old acquaintances. We talked about Taoism, and it was a kind of friendship. In this way, you are all my martial nephews." The 3 heroes of Qilu did not know that they had such a powerful backer. The eldest, Li Ning, looked at the 2 brothers and cupped his fists. He asked, "Greetings, Uncle Master. May I know your name? What kind of relationship do you have with my master? The 3 of us are only the master's disciples in name. Please inform the master." River Styx smiled and said, Well said. My Taoist name is River Styx. Among the immortals of the 4 seas, I'm known as Patriarch River Styx. Your master, Chunang, is an overseas itinerant immortal. His master inherited the ancient water immortals' orthodoxy. He is now the master of the four seas and the leader of the overseas immortals. When he first opened his abode in the South Sea, I was the incarnation of the heavenly demon. He was the pillar of the righteous path. I wanted to massacre the South Sea and suppress the Tao with the devil. He wanted to open the calamity of the four seas and control the sea eye of the four poles. At this point, the three heroes of Qilu felt that something was not right. As expected, River Styx continued. After that, my demonic body was filled in the sea eye. I wanted to trick him into letting me out. In the end, he sealed my demonic body and chased me for 3 months. I had to run hundreds of thousands of miles from the South Sea to the East Sea before I managed to escape. After that, I mastered my demonic arts and fought him to the death in the sea eye. I killed countless immortals of the four seas, but he was the only one who defeated me. I was chased to Middle-earth. Really, fate is not shallow. At this point, Li Ning could no longer maintain his smile. The three heroes of Qilu were trembling. They cried out in their hearts, "Bitter, Master, if you don't remove the roots when you cut the grass, you're still a disciple." River Styx was in a daze for a while. He then turned back and smiled at the three heroes of Qilu. "I can't believe I still have the chance to meet Brother Chin's 3 disciples today. I'm really lucky, really lucky." His smile was exceptionally kind and benevolent. If one did not know that he was the old demon River Styx who had slaughtered the four seas, they would have thought that he was the uncle master of the 3 heroes of Qilu and Qilu. I'm good friends with my 3 apprentice nephews. If they bully you, it means that they're not giving face to me, the great ancestor River Styx. River Styx said plainly. With just a few words, one could hear the arrogance and recklessness in his words. He had earned his reputation through killing. There was no pretense at all. River Styx glanced at everyone in the hall. They were so scared that they did not even dare to breathe. Chapter 535. Naturally, there were people watching in the hall. When Zhou Chun broke Na Tai's palm bone, someone had already gone to report it. However, Wu Sangui told them not to pay attention to it, and secretly wanted to investigate. Now that the 2 most powerful immortals had been refined into bones, they knew that something big had happened. Even Wu Sangui did not dare to make a decision on his own and went to find Wu Zhuan. Not long after, the great Ming dynasty's Jianzhou Zhuan brought Wu Sangui into the hall. Wu Sangui was fine, as Wu Zhuan was the great Ming dynasty Zhuan. Although these martial artists seemed to be of virtue and prestige, looking down on nobles and officials, when faced with the great Ming dynasty's Zhuan who controlled tens of thousands of soldiers and horses, these lowly Jianghu people had to be humble. At the end of the day, the martial artists were still not presentable. In the great Ming dynasty, even a proper scholar who took the imperial examinations could look down on them. Of course, these martial artists all had their own families and businesses. Their lives were far more comfortable than those poor scholars. It was just that they did not have any political status. Everyone came forward to pay their respects to the great Ming dynasty's Zhuan. Only River Styx did not move. He sat at the side, as if waiting for Wu Zhuan to come forward and pay his respects. If River Styx really did pay his respects, it would be a joke. Even the 2 ghosts trapped in the celestial devil diagram would look down on Wu Zhuan. He was merely a great Ming dynasty Zhuan, a mere mortal who was only 100 years old and had some power. Even the most modest of cultivators would have the bearing of despising the nobles and the arrogant marquis in their bones. Even those in the world who didn't know much about alchemy and fire only respected him on the surface. There was no need to talk about how much they looked down on him. They tricked the emperors of the world into concocting pills and medicines. Not to mention that they took the opportunity to collect heavenly minerals and earthly treasures. They most likely refined some lead-mercury medicine to poison those emperors to death. It was hard to say how much of it was intentional. The Qin emperor, Han Wu, had been tricked by Su Fu into giving him 500 young boys and girls and countless treasures. The other had even tricked his own daughter. It could be said that he had been tricked by Li Shaojun and Luanda. Emperor Taizong of Tang died after taking alchemy, and Emperor Taizu of Song conferred Miao Sun the title of Minister of Honor. These were only unorthodox methods of drawing pills and taking medicine, yet they were able to fool the emperor like this. It could be seen just how valuable imperial power was to cultivators, not to mention the countless kingdoms outside of Middle-earth. The Great Wilderness and the Four Extremities Wilderness were the lands of cultivators. The land of Xiankong, Island's ancestor Xiankong in the Northern Sea, was even more vast than Middle-earth. There were countless hermit cultivators in the Great Eastern Wilderness. Each of them had their own territories. The Old Devil in West Kunlun was like the emperor of the land there. Even River Styx's original self was a figure who commanded the four seas and led the immortals. Although Chanong had only recently suppressed the South Sea itinerant immortals, it was not impossible for him to conquer the vast land overseas in the future and become the Four Seas sect master. There were countless sea nations under his command. The territory of Mount Shu was vast. It was a huge planet thousands of times larger than the Earth. The population of the Great Ming Dynasty was only 10 times larger than that of Chunang's hometown. The vast land was a paradise for cultivators. In comparison, a mere Great Ming Dynasty's commander-in-chief, even if the people of Middle-earth perished and China sank, how many people would even bother to look at it? This was the reason why the barbarians could steal the fate of the country and enjoy the country for hundreds of years. Not to mention the universe's 6 freaks and the Greenwood Immortal, who viewed mortals as ants. Even the Ming Dynasty's royalty, like Kai Wei Sung and Zhu Yumu, felt that their country was not as important as ascension. Even if Chong Zhen grabbed this ancestor's trousers and begged, if it was the Tao, he would probably be scolded. "Get lost, don't disturb my ascension." Wu Zhuang seemed to have been a commander-in-chief for too long. He was flattered every day and forgot himself. He actually thought he was someone important. Seeing how disrespectful River Styx was, he frowned and thought to himself, "This young Taoist is so rude." Although martial arts are cheap and scholarly, with my status as the commander-in-chief, I have to treat the princes with courtesy. These people who don't belong to the secular world really don't have rules. Only Wu Sangui's mind was slightly clearer. He knew that the person in front of him was a ruthless person who would kill at the slightest provocation and grind bones into ashes. He secretly tugged at the corner of his father's clothes. Wu Zhuang then came back to his senses. He cupped his fists and said, "Everyone here is a pillar of our Great Ming Dynasty. Please forgive me for not being able to welcome you earlier." He continued, "Now that the northern captives are knocking on the border and the soldiers are surrounding the Deling River Castle, the border is in danger. Although General Zhu Dasho is in charge of the Deling River Castle, it is not appropriate to capture 1,000,000 people from the north. I hope that everyone will help the Great Ming Dynasty for the sake of the people of Middle-earth. I will not be stingy with my rewards. I will report this to the imperial court and reward you according to your contributions." Everyone, conferring the title of wife and son, is the aspiration of a husband. Hearing that conferring the title of wife and son was conferred, River Styx and Li Ning did not have much reaction. However, the others were moved. Their eyes flashed. Although they did not show it on the surface, they were moved in their hearts. Only Li Ning and his brothers were slightly solemn when they saw the words people of Middle-earth. Li Ning only cupped his fists and said, "What does Sir want us for?" Wu Zhuang saw that success was imminent and did not care about Li Ning's rudeness. He smiled and said, "Now that Jianzhou has sufficient soldiers and rations, it is not difficult to rush to the Ling River Castle's aid. However, that slave Jian is best at besieging and attacking reinforcements, which is why I'm slightly worried. If there is a righteous man who can sneak into the Deling River Castle under heavy military encirclement and contact General Zhu Dasho for me, and the two of us can cooperate and make slave Jian return without success." When the people heard this, they did not care about Wu Zhuang's high position and were in an uproar. Someone secretly said, "Isn't this suicide?" Hearing this, the others all nodded. Under heavy military encirclement, how could it be easy to communicate? Although their martial arts skill was not bad, there were also strong men in the Jinnu army, not to mention the traders of the Central Earth who used their martial art to become an official in the later Jin dynasty. Even if their martial arts skill was as good as that of a deity, they would not be able to withstand the encirclement and suppression of more than 1,000 elite soldiers. These people were people who cherished their lives. No matter how nice they said it before, they were now evading the responsibility. They came here to achieve meritorious deeds for glory, splendor, and wealth. If they lost their lives, what was the use of glory, splendor, and wealth? Wu Zhuang saw that they were all evading the responsibility and looked like they were in a difficult position. He could not help but feel angry. Of course, he was not willing to sacrifice his life for the country, but now that the others were not willing to sacrifice their life for the country to help him get promoted and make a fortune, he became angry instead. Of course, his skills were still a little shallow. If it was the officials of Middle East, they would definitely think of using this opportunity to obstruct the border army, suppress the officers and soldiers, and use culture to suppress martial arts. This would cause the border army to suffer heavy casualties, and he would find a good way to get promoted and make a fortune. As long as the country did not perish, he could report that the border army was in chaos and borrow the hands of slave Jian to eliminate it. Not only would he not be at fault, he would also have meritorious deeds. Chapter 536. Riverstick smiled and raised his hand. You flatter me, you flatter me. He pointed at Lin Ning and the rest and said, These 3 martial nephews of mine are all skilled in both literature and martial arts. To them, a mere Ling River Castle is as easy as walking on flat ground. I think the general is still underestimating them. These 3 martial nephews are so talented. How can they bear such a small burden? Wu Zhuang heard Riverstick say this and was shocked. He looked at the 3 elites of Qilu and thought that they were indeed extraordinary. However, when he heard what Riverstick said next, he was puzzled. Riverstick's continued. Once the military situation at the borders arises, the people will have to suffer. There's a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. As the people of the great Ming dynasty, they should share the burden of the country and have the heart to serve the country. How about this? I will make the decision for them and send an invitation to let the chief Huang Taiji know that they're going to scout the camp. I will tell them the time and place to enter Ling River Castle and let them enter the city under the eyes of everyone. This will definitely dampen the morale of the people of the Jian dynasty and let the chief know the power of the men of the great Ming dynasty. These words were spoken openly and righteously. Everyone in the hall could hear the sound of these words falling on the ground. They could not help but look at him and thought, I wonder what kind of enmity this Taoist has with his 3 nephews. Why is he so eager to send them to their deaths? Wu Zhuang also thought, I have heard of the 3 elites of Qilu and Qilu. They're indeed quite famous. However, is this Taoist really their martial uncle? If that wasn't the case, why didn't the 3 of them refute him when he said such ruthless words? Could it be that they really have the intention to sacrifice their lives for the country? For a moment, everyone in the hall was in a trance, and there was dead silence. Only Li Ning and the other 2 could not voice their bitterness. They had not done this willingly. It was clear that they had been forced by this martial uncle. Their master had chased this person for hundreds of thousands of miles across the South Sea. Now, they were getting their comeuppance. Originally, Li Ning had been thinking of other ways, but just now, his master's soft voice rang in his ears. He said, Lin Ning, I'm still in the South Sea. I am using heaven's perception to send you a message. Although Taoist River Styx has a grudge against me, he has always been ambitious and has extraordinary spirit. He will not make things difficult for you juniors. No matter what he said, he would agree to it. I think he most likely wants to take you as his disciples and tempt you to betray the sect and embarrass me. I have no time to spare right now, so I'll take it as a test for all of you. If all of you remain unmoved and would rather die than submit, I'll officially take you in as my disciples in the future. If you really betray the sect, you should know that although the old demon Nether River is fierce, I've chased him for hundreds of thousands of miles. After I come out of seclusion, I'll definitely clean up the sect. In the South Sea immortal abode, Chun Ong retracted his divine sense and looked in the direction of the north. He nodded with a smile. Wu Zhuang didn't even have time to consider when he saw Mingy waving his hand and saying boldly, "You don't have to think about it anymore. I will make the decision for you." Then he released a bright light. A thunderclap came from Jianzhou City, and a voice echoed for dozens of miles. It could be heard from Jianzhou all the way to Daling River, like rolling thunder. "Chief, barbarian slave Huang Taiji, listen up. I, Wu Zhuan, am the commander of the great Ming army. I see you all as pigs and dogs. In the past, your father served Li Chongliang like a slave and drank his excrement like it was sweet dew. I am not talented, so I will follow the example of my ancestors and enslave you like pigs and dogs. I will kill a mere barbarian slave, like slaughtering chickens and ducks. Listen up. Tomorrow at noon, I will send 3 experts, Lin Ning, Yang De, and Zhou Chun, to Daling River Castle to contact General Zhu Daso. What can you do to me?" Ha 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 ha. A wild laugh ended. Wu Zhuan and his son recognized that it was their own voice. These words were like a bolt of lightning that pierced through their bodies, causing them to freeze on the spot. They could almost see Huang Taiji's rage and madness when he heard these words. This was such a great humiliation. If he couldn't put the heads of the father and son on the table, then he, Huang Taiji, would no longer be the chief of the Jurchen people. No one would be willing to submit to him. Lin Ning, Zhou Chun, and Yang De were not any better. Lin Ning laughed bitterly in his heart. "Master, is this what you meant by having an extraordinary spirit and an expert who will not bother with us juniors? Was I under an illusion? Did that person fabricate Master's voice?" However, there was no turning back now. For what they heard of River Styx, they knew that he was many times more terrifying than Slave Jian's army. There was still a way out if they went to Daling River, but if they did not listen to him, they would definitely die. River Styx patted their shoulders and said with a smile, "When heaven is about to bestow a great responsibility on a man, he must first torture his will and work his muscles and bones. I see that you all have potential, which is why I did not hesitate to accept this karma and train you well. Of course, this path is not to send you to your deaths." He still wanted to say something, but he was interrupted by Wu Zhuan. "Taoist, do you know the majesty of the imperial law? You are just an outsider, and yet you dare to pass down my order without permission. The Great Light Empire's law will not tolerate you." River Styx said plainly, "General Wu, please wake up, or else I will have to change a general. Nowadays, many people outside the world fear karma. Only River Styx is not. If this Great Light Empire's law is wrong, then I will change another one. I do not care whether it is the Great Light Empire's law, the Great Tang's law, or the Great Song's law." As he said this, he raised his palm horizontally, and endless devil thoughts entered it. It transformed into a world, and the father and son of the Wu clan were thrown into it, possessing a person formed by a strand of thoughts. It was an ancient continent of barons, where martial arts were respected, and there were trillions of people. Martial artists could break through the void, shatter the heavens, and ascend to the martial world. The martial world ruled over billions of continents, and even an insect could destroy the world. The Devil's evolution of this world used many settings that Chunong had seen before. After the father and son of the Wu clan went through hundreds of years of life and death, he casually smashed this world and absorbed it into another world of Confucianism. After going through several lifetimes like this, he finally exhausted the inner devil thoughts and released the 2 of them. After this encounter, the father and son of the Wu clan had almost forgotten all of their memories in the Great Ming Dynasty. It was only when Chun Ong casually pointed at them that they remembered. The memories of the illusory world in their minds were slightly blurred due to the passage of time. However, the terrifying image of River Styx destroying the world and reshaping the world in the blink of an eye was deeply imprinted in their minds. After scaring the 2 of them with the power of sky magic, River Styx did not care if their values were firm or if their souls were firm. He continued to speak to his 3 disciples. "I have 3 items to give to you so that you can survive this calamity." Chapter 537. River Styx turned another spell into white light and sent it into their minds. He said, "This is the great killing technique of the Blood Sea River Styx's Azura demon path. Originally, there were 1,296,000,000 ways to kill. I've extracted 1,008 of them, including poison, curse, grudge, massacre, army, and so on. They're all spells that you can use. This is the essence of the Blood Sea Azura when he massacred the worlds. He killed all living beings in the worlds, studied their weaknesses, and slaughtered them. This is the essence accumulated over billions of years. As long as you can comprehend a fraction of it, even a strand of hair can be used to kill. It's just 10,000 elite soldiers. I'm afraid it's not enough for you to kill." He sighed and pretended to be concerned. "Some of them are especially cruel. You can't use the bloodbath methods. It's too cruel, too bloody. It's cruel, it's cruel." Hearing the words of a demon like Mingi, although they didn't know how much of it was true and how much was false, when Li Ning and the other two looked at each other, their eyes were somewhat cautious. How terrifying was the art of killing that even old demon Mingi was afraid of. Just thinking about it sent chills down their spines. In reality, River Styx had not developed the great killing technique to this level. He used the heavenly demon drawing to create all living beings. The evil thoughts and the endless distracting thoughts were turned into killing thoughts and evolved into sentient beings. Through killing each other, he had honed an endless number of killing techniques. Every one of them was cruel and extraordinary. They could be said to be the best killing techniques in the world. They included all kinds of tools like knives, spears, swords, halberds, embroidery needles, and all kinds of tactics. They included all kinds of schemes, military formations, and all kinds of spells like poison curses, ghosts, and witchcraft. It was more than enough to extract the 1,008 that Lin Ning and the others could use. No matter how highly Lin Ning regarded this terrifying technique that could turn evil into righteousness that River Styx had bestowed upon him, when he actually touched the records of the great art of killing, he was still shaken by the spirit of endless slaughter that was recorded in it. Looking at the general principles, it was definitely not the kind of evil path that Lin Ning had imagined, one that was cruel beyond measure and took pleasure in killing. Instead, it was an upright description of how the heavenly Tao operated on all things, ending with death. Killing was a myriad of methods. It recorded that all things in the world fought and killed, evolved into living creatures, and all of them were proficient in the art of killing. They fought for their lives, and those who didn't kill well would die. From small things like the survival of ants and the killing of other living beings, to medium things like the operation of a country and the ending of conflicts through killing, to large things like the life and death of the universe and the courage to kill all others. Regardless of whether it was an ignorant ant, a plant, a sentient being, the spirit of all living things, even if it was a cultivator seeking for the truth, an immortal with a mortal life, they all had the Tao of killing. The spirit of this technique could not be described as insignificant. Even though Lin Ning and the other two had a negative impression of it first, when they read it, they could not help but be deeply shocked by the picture of all living things in the world depicted by this technique. This technique was not empty talk about the great Tao. It sought to be real and reliable. The various methods of killing that were recorded perfectly matched the murderous instinct in one's heart. Without the stimulation of one's inner demons, one would feel intoxicated. Although River Styx saw that the few of them were resisting on the surface, he had already secretly accepted this technique. He even nodded and smiled. That's right. In this world, don't tell me one only survives by being vegetarian and praying to Buddha. Doesn't it depend on killing other living things, even killing one's own kind, killing everything in order to fight for a place to live? Therefore, my River Styx's Tao of killing runs through the end of the universe. There will be a day when Taoism and Buddhism will end, and there will be a day when the rules of etiquette will be broken. Only the Tao of killing will end with the universe. Hearing his words, Li Ning and the others finally woke up with a start. Drenched in sweat, they struggled out of their killing instincts. They were so terrified that they didn't dare to look at this killing art anymore. Trembling, they said, This is the true devil. If one learns this technique, one will definitely prioritize killing in everything he does in the future. All karma and endless restraints must be resolved by killing. If it is as it says, if one's thoughts are not clear, then all conflicts and entanglements in the world will be resolved by killing. Although it looks like evil has turned to the right path, in reality, it is silent, ruthless, and cruel. It is even scarier than those evil techniques. Killing can't solve all problems, but it can solve most problems. River Styx only smiled and did not say anything else. Initially, he had planned that if one of the three elites of Qilu could learn this Tao of killing, Qinong would become River Styx's disciple and become River Styx's disciple of the Tao of killing. However, it seemed like the three elites of Qilu were closer to Chun Ang's orthodoxy. They could not inherit this demonic Tao that was destined to ignore everything. Perhaps I can establish a sect based on this and call it the Sky Demon Sect of Killing. With this as the doctrine, I will select the most talented people and nurture them carefully. With this Tao of killing, River Styx's Tao of killing passed down to me. River Styx thought to himself. In the end, he pointed between the three elites of Qilu's brows and bestowed them with a demonic scripture. It was the entry method of his orthodoxy. After all, he and Qinong were originally one. Based on the idea that the deity's disciple was his disciple, he gave them the entry method test. River Styx smiled and said, "With such a method, wouldn't it be easy for you to break through the formation tomorrow?" Lin Ning and the other two smiled bitterly in their hearts. It was easy, but accepting the bestowment from these three sects was probably the same as betraying their sections. Their honor master was a person who hunted down River Styx. If they really accepted the bestowment, their honored master would punish them in the future. It would be worse than today. However, River Styx did not care too much. He had already broken through this trial. Tomorrow would be the day of Yang Da's death. The fate of the three of them was connected, and they would bear this trial together. They had also received a bit of fate from River Styx and bestowed the Tao of killing. If they died due to the trial, even if they were useless, Qinong would not feel the pinch. This was River Styx's way of doing things. If Qinong was here, it would be more appropriate. As he thought about this, River Styx looked to the south. In the South Sea, beyond the endless void, there was a similar gaze that met his. Qinong was sitting beside the furnace in the celestial abode. Inside the furnace, a golden crow supported the furnace. The golden flames formed by the Nanming leaf fire formed a lianhua. More than 10 items that were concealed by different colors floated in it. Among them were fans, mirrors, stones, bells, rings, gourds, pouches, and other oddly shaped objects. They were all top-notch treasures. They were connected with the aura of karma and were nourished in the furnace. When the two of them looked at each other, under the operation of the heavenly Tao, for treasures broke through the restriction and flew out of the furnace. They turned into a stream of light and rushed out of the ocean, disappearing into the northern horizon. Qinong did not organize them. Instead, he calculated in his heart, the first furnace of treasures will come out in response to the trial. With the operation of the heavenly secrets, they will definitely fall into the hands of the fated person. They will be the vanguard to start the trial. They say fated chances, fated chances. Do you think my fated chances, Chen Ang's, are so easily taken? You took my fated chances today. Tomorrow, I'll make you sell your life to me. Chapter 538. After what happened last time, Wu Sangui and his son feared Mingyi to the core. They didn't dare to bother him at night. Mingyi was sitting in midair on a cloud and practicing his qi. Suddenly, he sensed something. Along the river, a golden light streaked across the sky from the south. Mingyi's cloud was like a lotus covering 100 miles. The golden light hit the cloud, somersaulted, and fell into the camp below. From River Styx's point of view, it should have entered the Wu father and son's tent when he sensed Wu Sangui's unusual breath. From afar, one could vaguely see that there was a golden halo within the crimson aura. This Wu Sangui is indeed lucky. Among the treasures in my cauldron, there were only 4 that were disturbed by the Liaodong disaster. He just happened to get the Ring of Stars. No wonder he was the one with the most chi in the Guanning army. Even though this war has escalated into one of the preludes to the 4-9 calamities of the immortals, no one can underestimate him. River Styx calculated with his fingers. Unfortunately, even though I am not as decisive in killing as I am still a ruthless person. I'm afraid Wu Sangue will not end well. Apart from this accident, there was nothing else that could be said to have happened tonight. River Styx also left his cloud for the night. The celestial and demon drawing turned into a long banner and fluttered behind him. With his place as the center, the skyscraping demon could sense people's hearts within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. Even though most people had fallen into a dream, their thoughts in the dream were still sensed by the skyscraping demon. They turned into endless demon thoughts and gathered behind River Styx to form a 9-layered demon banner. Inside the layers of demon banner, countless demons and ghosts formed a circle, chanting demonic chanting, turning the space they were in into a demonic kingdom of hell. Inside the 9-layered demon banner, there were rows upon rows, and there were 9 layers of hell stacked in the shape of pagodas. After being tempered by the demon banner, these scattered thoughts gradually gave birth to a subtle demonic consciousness. With intelligence and cunning, the endless chaotic and scattered demons turned into demons that truly had their own consciousness and were controlled by the Nether River. The demons of these countless people's distracting thoughts were tempered and accumulated by magic. They absorbed endless psyche power and wisdom. After being purified day and night by the celestial demon diagram, only 1 out of a million demons would transform into the free-form heavenly demon and become the heavenly demon power of the Netherworld River. The Sky River magic power was formed by the 9 true talisman seeds after absorbing the essence of water. Even if it was just a rough embryo, it was still the highest level of magic power in the Mystic Door. Later on, Chunong created a method of tempering it with 7 types of innate true water, which improved it to the next level. In the future, when he mastered 7 types of innate true water magic power, he could be called a top-notch inheritance in this world. It was not inferior to the Tai Ching Celestial Light, Shang Qing Celestial Light, Jade Clear Celestial Light, and other true teachings of the 3 clear ones. Now, River Styx used the Blood River magic power that was a variant of the Sky River magic power, which was formed from the Blood Sea magic power. He used the Blood River magic power to enter the path of diabolism and created the 9 heavens, 10 earth shape, and formless celestial demon drawing, the Sky Demon secret technique. Therefore, River Styx cultivated both the Blood Devil and the Sky Demon Tao. Putting aside the Blood Devil Tao, the Blood River magic power was born from the Sky River magic power and was originally the best path of diabolism magic power. However, the Sky magic power did not have a foundation, and it was only used by the Blood River magic power. It was fine in the short term, but in the long term, the Sky Demon's foundation would definitely be eroded by the Blood Devil, and it would fall behind the Blood Devil magic power. Therefore, River Styx had long wanted to create the foundation of the Sky magic power. It was a pity that even the true teachings of the mystic devil of the Sky Demon orthodoxy in this realm, the Red Body Sect, the Child Sand God, the Old Devil Red Lotus of the Sea of Constellations, and the others had only learned some of the skills of the Mystic Door's Chi refinement to enter the path, and mixed it with the Blood Sea Azura's Blood Devil Tao's foundation of transcendence magic power to cultivate a slightly mixed Tao foundation. The true Mahasvara heavenly demon orthodoxy only learned to cultivate the skills of the fiend gods. He hoped to use the fiend gods to refine his own body and become a sky demon. He did not have a solid foundation at all, and the complete inheritance that was passed down through the generations. River Styx still needed to supplement the foundation of the transcendence magic power. Fortunately, Chunong was indeed the incarnation of a projection of an almighty being from another realm. With the true teachings of the fiend gods and fiend gods passed down by the mystic devil sect in this realm, he created a treasure of Tao like the diagram of gods and fiend gods. Ever since he cultivated this diagram overseas, he studied the inheritance of the Buddhism sect, the archenemy of the heavenly demon tribe, and finally succeeded in cultivating the sky magic power. His Mahasvara heavenly demon path was far different from the mystic door's chi refinement and primordial spirit lineage. It was closer to the Buddhism sect's psyche power and consciousness. The Buddhism sect's transcendence magic power used the psyche as the foundation and the consciousness as the basis. There were 9 senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, and consciousness. His Mahasvara heavenly demon path was different from this realm, but compared to the mystic door's chi refinement, it was closer to the Buddhism sect's psyche power. Hence, the sky magic power was also a type of psyche power. The mystic door's transcendence magic power was a talisman true seed, and the sky demon path's transcendence magic power was his Mahasvara heavenly demon. It was refined from the demonic thoughts of all living beings, and it had 9 senses. It was a psychic, his Mahasvara heavenly demon. The diagram of gods and demons in the netherworld river gathered the distracting thoughts of all living beings and turned them into endless demons. Among the endless demons, one could sense them with magic and secretly refine them with demonic spells. Only then did they give birth to infinitely cunning and intelligent demons. Then, they were tempered by the diagram of gods and demons and used their own Taoist heart to sense them. Only then did they suddenly sense one of the millions of demons and turn it into his freedom incarnation, heavenly demon, and a magical power. The sky magic power was cultivated, and the first thought of his Mahasvara heavenly demon jumped out of the celestial demon diagram and became the heavenly demon primordial spirit. Next to the river of blood that was formed by blood sea primordial spirit, it turned into the shadow of a heavenly demon. Then, more and more of his Mahasvara heavenly demons jumped out of the celestial demon diagram and integrated into the heavenly demon primordial spirit. By the time the sun rose in the east, there were already 1,800 of them, and the heavenly demon primordial spirit seemed to have a physical form. River Styx already knew that the heavenly devil primordial soul should be formed by 129,600 thoughts, which was exactly the number of 1 yuan. All these years, he had transformed into the great freedom heavenly demon and had endless magical powers. The heavenly demon primordial spirit that he transformed into could be called the great freedom heavenly sun and was on par with the Buddhas. This orthodoxy was no longer inferior to the orthodox teachings of the Buddhist faction. After he transformed into a rainbow and ascended to the western pure land of ultimate bliss, it was unknown whether the Buddhist faction had a higher level of inheritance. However, in the human realm of the land, the heavenly demon orthodoxy could be considered orthodox and was already a path that led to the heavens. River Styx, who had created this path, could now call himself the demon ancestor. This was because the heavenly demon primordial spirit and the great freedom heavenly sun were created by River Styx. Therefore, as long as he had 129,600 thoughts, he could achieve the highest realm of this technique, which was equivalent to the great freedom heavenly sun of Buddha. As for whether the heavenly demon orthodoxy would have higher changes, such as the legendary primordial heavenly demon, it would depend on River Styx's fate in the future. A wisp of purple gas disappeared between River Styx's brows, and the true fire of the sun slowly spread to the ground. The blood river behind River Styx's head and a Dharma body that was exactly the same as a supreme demon body turned into 2 primordial spirits, one red and one black, and entered River Styx's consciousness. In the next instant, this physical body immediately disintegrated and reformed into a supreme demon body. With another turn, it transformed into a demon lord with a dragon's head and a human's body, and its eyes contained the sun, moon, and stars. Then it transformed into a demon god with a human's head and a snake's body. This happened 9 times in a row, and it became slower and slower. Finally, it transformed back into River Styx's original body. Chapter 539. River Styx retracted the cloud. The soldiers below were initially interested in the cloud that stretched for hundreds of miles like Lianhua. In the blink of an eye, the cloud descended to the ground and shrunk to the size of an acre. They were so frightened that they dispersed. River Styx shook his head secretly. This was the most elite Guaning army of the Ming dynasty. If they were so weak, it was obvious that their armaments had been neglected. He landed on the drill ground and went straight to the tent where the father and son of the Wu family were. Along the way, no one dared to stop him, and he saw Wu Sangue directly. Wu Sangue hadn't slept all night, and his spirit was strangely excited. Mingy naturally knew why, but he didn't want to expose Wu Sangue's scheme, so he just pretended not to know. He asked in a nice voice, "Young general, where are my 3 good-for-nothing martial nephews?" Mingy even had the heart to crack a joke. He laughed and said, "Could it be that you let them go? I have already made the announcement. If they're not here, won't I lose face? Perhaps I will take you as my martial nephew and lead my men to take their names and charge into the formation." Wu Sangue did not take his words as a joke. He was frightened and thought, "Luckily, I kept an eye on the 3 heroes of Qilu. Otherwise, they would not want to die and would have secretly run away. Instead, they would have caused me trouble. They charged into the formation of the army alone and even notified me in advance. Is this something a human can do? How did the masters of those 3 people offend him? Their martial uncle. Why do they harm them like this?" He hurriedly said, "Immortal, the 3 heroes of Qilu are still guests in the camp. I will send someone to invite them. Yesterday, you challenged them in the name of my father. Even if it was embarrassing for my father. It has nothing to do with you." Now that River Styx had cultivated the sky demon's primordial spirit, his first magical power was the ability to sense people's minds. He could even sense the thoughts of a celestial being. Those below the level of an individual immortal would not be able to hide anything. Wu Sangue's thoughts were as clear as the palm of his hand. Wu Sangue called a bodyguard over, whispered a few words in his ear, and let him go out. Mingy saw clearly that this bodyguard was none other than a martial arts master who had sat on the table yesterday. Although he was conscious now, his thoughts were restrained by a circular restriction, leaving only the thoughts of loyalty to Wu Sangue. He scanned with his primordial spirit. As expected, those who refused yesterday were generals who were not the Wu father and son's trusted subordinates. They all had this ring in their consciousness. He nodded to himself and said, "As expected, Wu Sangue didn't stay idle last night. He tried out the supernatural power of the bewitching star ring. It's a pity that this person doesn't know much about cultivation and didn't do it covertly enough. He even dared to use it under my nose. But that's good. I don't have to waste time killing these people. I wanted them to die for the country today. Since Wu Sangue has a use for them, then forget it. Based on my calculations, they won't be able to survive long in Wu Sangue's hands. Soon, it will be a great calamity for the Wu family's father and son. It was originally a disaster that would cause them to lose their positions, but now that I've helped him, it's like adding oil to the fire, turning it into a great calamity of life and death. I just don't know if it's the credit of my voice or my own calculations." River Styx pinched his fingers to verify. Anyway, the angry Huang Taiji will not let Wu Zhuang go back alive. Wu Sangue, to be the main character of this disaster, it's better to die than to get rich and get promoted. It's not good for your luck to be suppressed by Wu Zhuang. Only when Wu Zhuang is dead will you have the chance to make a name for yourself. Don't thank me. If you want to thank someone, thank me, Chenong." After a while, the bodyguard brought Li Ning and the others over. River Styx's eyes were sharp. Not only did Li Ning not learn the 3 great skills that he had passed on to him yesterday, but he was even more proficient in the skills that Chenong had passed on to him. He even used the power of the devil path to make his martial arts even more refined. There was a faint murderous aura on Yongda, but it was because he had been influenced by River Styx's devil path. However, he still mainly used the skills that Chenong had learned as a reference. Only Zhou Chun did not have the murderous aura of the devil path. Instead, he had a bit of the Buddhist psyche power. River Styx's eyes narrowed. He sneered in his heart. Where did this bald Buddhist monk come from? How dare he try to bewitch my disciple? It must be the old bald Buddhist monk by Mei who predicted Li Ning's fate. He knew that his daughter would be the key to Mei's prosperity in the future, so he sent his disciples and grand-disciples to bewitch her. However, Li Ning is experienced and prudent. He knows how powerful it is, so he did not dare to learn these outer Tao skills. Thus, he used Zhou Chun to take a detour. You damn bald Buddhist monk by Mei. Even by Guy did not dare to interfere, but you came out. Zhou Chun was bewitched by the outer Tao. His Taoist heart is still not clear enough. He still needs to be polished. River Styx had casually planted a demonic thought in Zhou Chun. Not only would this demonic thought appear when he was cultivating qi to polish his Taoist heart, it would also clash with the Buddhist psyche power. Anyone who saw Zhou Chun would feel hatred for him for no reason. This was the ability of the heavenly devil of resentment. This halo of resentment was usually useless. However, when he fought with others, he would bear the brunt of most of the attacks that were aimed at his two sworn brothers. In this test, Zhou Chun was destined to go through more hardships than the others. This was River Styx's painstaking effort to make up for his impure Taoist heart. It definitely had nothing to do with River Styx's hatred for bald Buddhist monks. River Styx smiled and said, "Martial nephews, let's depart now. Uncle wishes you a safe return. This time, you must bring back Huang Taiji's head. If you can't, then bring back General Feng Dasho's reply." He paused for a moment and took out 3 items from his transcendent artifact pouch. "Uncle has nothing else to give, but I can still give you 3 weapons. Martial nephews, feel free to take them and go on a killing spree. Make sure that the Jian Nu won't be able to return from the north." Li Ning and the rest looked at the 3 weapons that were carved with countless strange runes in their hands. They did not look like decent things, so they could only nod and agree. The 3 of them climbed onto the 3 horses that Wu Sangui had prepared and galloped towards the Great Ling River Castle. Huang Taiji personally donned his battle armor and sat in the Jian Nu's camp. He faced the surrounding Baile and Bannermaster and shouted loudly in the barbarian language. "Today is the day that Ming General Wu Xiang announced that he would break through my Great Jin's elite army and enter the Great Ling River Castle. Baile, the Southerners have insulted my father Nurasai. If I don't take down this person's head, how can I vent the hatred in my heart?" The Baile immediately bowed down. The group of Nujin generals also said, "We will definitely avenge our master and make sure that they won't be able to return." Huang Taiji glanced at his brothers who were kneeling below and sneered, "Baile, don't forget that my father is also your father. After being insulted like this, if I don't bring his head back, I will be unfilial, and all of you will be guilty of the most heinous crimes." After knocking down these Baile who wanted to use this to damage his authority, Huang Taiji then pacified them. That Ming general must have something to rely on if he dares to say such words. I think his voice seemed to be caused by a spell. "Humph! That lowly Han thinks that he can damage my great Jin's reputation with a little sorcery? Send a letter to you Tuo and Ji Gu and kill them at all the strategic locations from Jianzhou to Great Ling River." Chapter 540. Li Ning and the other 2 urged their horses to gallop towards the Ling River. All the way along the official road, they used their vital energy to protect the heart meridians of the fine horses they were sitting on to prevent them from dying from exhaustion. That Yu Tuo and Ji Gu received Huang Tai's order to use their elite troops to guard the pass between the Ling River and Jianzhou, guarding the dangerous mountains and rivers. However, they were still lacking in manpower and could only set up 3 layers of obstruction. Not long after, Li Ning saw a group of hundreds of Nuzin tribes in the distance. They used spurs to trap horses and horses to guard a mountain pass. When the people there saw the 3 of them, they became slightly restless. The words that River Styx said yesterday had already spread throughout the entire army of the Jian Nu. Now that the Jian Nu was in high spirits, the whole army held their breath and wanted to make sure the Ming army did not return. As one of Huang Taiji's most trusted generals, Yu Tuo naturally hated the intruder to the bone. Every moment, He wished he could capture the intruder with his own hands so that he could ask Huang Taiji for a reward. He led these hundreds of elite troops to guard the first pass, with the intention of snatching this reward. Seeing that Li Ning and the other two did not get angry but laughed, he pointed with the knife in his left hand and said decisively, "Sons, it is time to make contributions for the Jin Kingdom. These 3 people insulted our master. If you cut off their arms, you will be rewarded with 50 taels of silver and 5 slaves. If you kill 1 person, I will reward him with 100 taels of silver and 10 slaves. If you kill all 3 of them, I will promote you to Niu Lu Zhongjing. I will report to our master, and I will not go back on my word." Such a generous reward was unprecedented since the founding of the later Jin Kingdom. If it was not for Yu Tuo's consideration of Huang Taiji's humiliation and the fact that these 3 people were highly skilled in martial arts, it was impossible for all 3 of them to die at the same time. Immediately, the morale of the Jiannu army was greatly boosted. With a roar, they all drew their bows and shot at Li Ning and the others. Yang spun the long knife in his hand and infused his jinqi into it. Immediately, he felt the jinqi in his acupoints that was contaminated with demonic qi jump. The strange demonic runes on the knife seemed to have a life of their own and immediately merged with his jinqi, transforming into a fierce killing jinqi that was mixed with demonic qi. The knife light suddenly grew several feet and cut the arrows that were shooting at the 3 into powder. "Second brother, you must not fall for the old demon River Styx's trick. I felt that your jinqi was not pure. Now that you used the weapon that the old demon gave you, I'm afraid he will harm you." Li Ning's expression changed, and he advised. Yang only smiled bitterly. "Big brother, honored master once told me that I will have a trial of death in the future. He said that if I survive, everything will be fine. If not, everything will be over. These days I have been feeling that something is going to happen. These days I have been disturbed, and I feel that something is going to happen. These days, old demon enlightened me. How can I let my 2 brothers be implicated by me? Cultivating this demonic technique will only lead to death in the future." Yang felt that his jinqi had increased by another level. He had already opened more than 50 acupoints. Now he had opened more than 200 acupoints, surpassing Li Ning. However, his body was empty and his blood essence was dried up. It was as if his life force was being sucked dry by this demonic technique. His jinqi was still growing as if there was no bottleneck. Yang could clearly feel his dried up essence and endless potential. He smiled bitterly. "The jinqi in my body is surging endlessly. The technique that the old demon taught me is just like the essence of the demonic knife that honored master taught me. Now, my knife intent is faintly flourishing. What I have gained in 1 breath has surpassed the years of hard work that I have put in. Honored master taught me this knife to deal with this trial." He sighed. Honored master said that this knife is very powerful and has a deep demonic nature. He told me to use the person to control the knife, not the knife to control the person. When I was practicing the knife all these years, I felt that even though the knife technique was exquisite, it did not have any demonic nature. As time passed, I became careless and forgot about honored master's instructions. Now that I have obtained this demonic technique, I realize that this knife is indeed the most demonic nature. Senior brother, junior brother, if I am controlled by the knife, please get rid of me so that I don't harm the world." Li Ning's expression suddenly changed. "Second brother, don't. The 3 of us are united. What difficulty can we not overcome? Have you thought about how disappointed honored master would be when he finds out that you have made such a sacrifice? Have you thought about the friendship between us brothers?" Yang only sighed. "This is my fate. Big brother, don't worry about me. I will open the way for the 2 brothers. You 2 quickly go see Zhu Dasho and complete the arrangements that the old demon River Styx set up. Now that I have cultivated his demonic technique, I know that this person is no longer someone from the mortal world. But with his status, his words carry enormous weight. As long as you 2 complete his task, he will definitely not make things difficult for you 2, seeing that I have already fallen into his trap." As he said this, he struck out a ray of bloodlight. The two horses that Li Ning and Zhou Chun were sitting on suddenly grew scales and tiger teeth, looking like flood dragons. It was obvious that they had been reborn and were no longer of the mortal bloodline. After striking out this ray of bloodlight, Yang seemed to have given up on resisting. A series of thunderous explosions were heard, and all the acupoints in his body were suddenly connected. While speaking, Li Ning and Zhou Chun saw the 8 elements genuine qi appear in front of Yang: red, orange, yellow, white, cyan, blue, purple, and black. They twisted and intertwined with each other. Sometimes the red light shone brightly, and the black qi weakened. Sometimes the Huan qi became stronger, and the white qi weakened. They knew that Yang Da's circulatory flow, 6 void technique, was activated. The last trace of blood-red, genuine qi burst out from the 8 qi and engulfed the 8 elements 6 qi. Yang Da was proficient in the 6 circulations of the void and the golden chamber's essentials. He had already gradually merged with the meridians that Chun Ong created this martial art. His entire body's 6 internal energies of wind, fire, heat, humidity, dryness, and cold had already been formed. Then he sensed the 6 external energies of the world: yin, yang, wind, rain, darkness, and light. The 6 internal energies of the world, using the 6 internal energies to control the 6 external energies, achieving the first transformation of the Golden Chamber's essentials. Combining the 8 transformations of the 6 voids of circulation, one could cultivate a state that was unprecedented and would never be replicated in the future. Even Qianong had created the 6 voids of circulation a little later, so he had only created a theoretical state. Or, it could be said, if a man rides on the righteousness of the heavens and the earth, and controls the debate of the 6 qis, he can travel without end. Then he can wait for it. The 6 voids of circulation originated from Chun Ang's Dark North Divine technique, while the debate of the 6 qis originated from the Golden Chamber's essentials. In terms of Chinese medicine, the 6 qis of the 6 inner qi were cultivated, and this stage was known as free and unfettered wandering. Unfortunately, the 6 internal energies evolved into the qi of blood, and the 6 external energies swallowed the qi of evil. With the demonic skill passed down by ancestor River Styx as the pivot, it gradually engulfed the 2 divine martial arts that Yang cultivated. The essence of the fledgling, free, and unfettered wandering that he cultivated was also completely absorbed. Now the blood lotus was restless, as if it was nurturing something and was about to sprout. Chapter 541. With the talismans, the saber qi became more and more spiritual. Yang was only one with the saber for a few breaths before he could use the saber qi to protect his body. He flew up and pounced towards where Yu Tuo and the female elite soldiers were. Kill! Although the female elite soldiers were surprised, they still had courage. The 20 to 30 elite soldiers let out a roar, and dozens of sabers surrounded Yang. Yang floated in the air, and saber lights flashed in all directions. Now that his hands were empty, he put his palms together and pulled out a bloody saber gleam that was 10 feet long. He swept it around, and dozens of people were cut into 2. A night of listening to the spring rain in the small building, a long saber in the killing field in the morning. As the saber gleam bloomed, dozens of heads flew up. The bloody light in Yang Da's hand swept through the killing formation. With one breath, he killed dozens of female soldiers. When he separated his hands, 2 saber gleams followed him. His footsteps were like God's, and with a slight flash, he was in another world. The saber in his hand was like a demon, and those who died under the saber had their blood essence sucked dry. At first, the female enlightened ones could still defend with their bravery, but after Yang killed 1 round, they were all scared out of their wits. Then, Yang let out a long roar, and his body was filled with blood essence. He recovered from his skinny state. The blood essence that was absorbed by the demonic saber was refined by the collapsing black hole in his body and became extremely pure. It flowed into the bloody Lianhua and instantly replenished Yang Da's essence. The demonic true qi in his body surged, and in a breath, he stepped into another realm. He opened the acupoints outside his body, and his martial path surpassed the limit. He stepped into a peak that no one had reached before. Far away, River Styx hid on the clouds and looked at young Da's display of power. He nodded and said, Taoist cultivators shouldn't interfere with the mortal world and shouldn't kill mortals. With such a performance, it was not in vain that I helped you cultivate your martial path divine art. You became a mortal scarier than Taoist cultivators. Hee. Now let's see what reason you have to stop him from going on a killing spree. Originally, in order to fuse with the 6 voids and the golden chamber, it should return to the origin. The 8 phases fused and the 6 chi was born. The 8 diseases fused and the 6 chi was born. The 6 chi was blended and the 6 chi was born. The 6 chi was blended and the 6 chi was used to control the 6 chi from the inside. The 6 chi was used to comprehend the higher level of the Dark North magic skill, and the carefree wandering was achieved. Now, because of the mutation of the diabolism, it actually absorbed the blade intent of the devil blade and evolved into the great freedom and invisible blade chi. This saber technique is no longer inferior to ascetic Buddha's mystic door formless sword art. Although it's only a martial path divine ability, with a sample, it's no longer difficult for me to deduce the demonic path secret arts. A mere martial art of the mortal world can produce such a terrifying Tao art. My main body that's far away in some unknown world is indeed terrifying. Chunong and I painstakingly studied, but we only managed to create 2 basic methods, the celestial river magic power and sky magic power. We even used many of Cult Master Chen's Tao arts as a reference. The martial art that my main body casually created has such changes, as expected of a figure of the otherworldly cult master level. River Styx silently used her primordial spirit to calculate, but she still couldn't find any trace of the main body from the otherworldly world. She could only stop and push Yang to silently, allowing his divine art to become sharper. He killed so many people that heads rolled. The hundreds of elite soldiers sent by the Jurchen to stop them were almost all killed by him in a few breaths' time. If it was a cultivator, his primordial spirit would have been blinded by the murderous aura a long time ago, and the heavenly secrets would immediately send down a death tribulation. With internal demons running amok and external tribulations haunting them, they would either be burned to death by the demonic fire or killed by the enemy. However, Yangda was still immortal now. He wasn't afraid of karma, so he went on a killing spree. His true chi became more vigorous, and his demonic saber became sharper. Out of the hundreds of people, only a few dozen soldiers at the periphery managed to escape because they were too slow. These soldiers still held a long spear in their hands, but their expressions were frozen, revealing an unconcealable fear. Yangda's body was surrounded by bloody light, and a few saber chis took shape. He casually cut Yu Tuo in half, and the remaining people were scared out of their wits. They screamed and wanted to escape, but it caused Yang Da's bloody saber to flash, and their heads flew. Lin Ning and Zhou Chun looked at Yang Da, who was still standing amidst the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood, and they were inexplicably shocked. They watched as he wielded his saber like a demon, and his body became one with the saber. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with murderous intent, and his movements were in harmony with the saber's will. They knew that their sworn brother was already controlled by the saber. The demonic nature hidden in the demonic saber was compatible with his demonic arts. Now, all his true chi had transformed into the chi of the demonic saber, and he was best at killing. Killing was really like mowing grass. His mind was already incomparably firm, and he dared to kill even billions of people, including the old, the weak, the women, and the children. He was a demonic saber, and no longer had any humanity. Luckily, Chenong treated his disciples well, and Yang Da's change was not irreversible. As long as his saber will was broken, he could still awaken his consciousness. In the future, he could temper his Tao heart, and it was not impossible for him to regain control of the demonic saber. He could truly bring this formless saber chi of incarnation into his own control. Even though there were endless dangers, it was also a righteous path of cultivation. He was not like Xiaoxi and 14th Ballet who had erased their original selves, and he was not like Wang Ming who had killed his past self. Lin Ning came back to his senses, and his heart was filled with grief. He shouted at Yangda, "Yangda, second brother, wake up, don't forget. You are Yangda, don't forget our oath as brothers." He turned and pulled out his long sword and shouted, "If you don't wake up, I will beat you until you wake up. Let's see if you really want to kill me as well." A hint of struggle appeared on Yang Da's face, and he suddenly became one with the saber. He turned into a long rainbow of saber chi and flew away. Lin Ning could not catch up, and he fiercely punched the willow tree beside him, leaving a deep fist mark. He was silent for a moment, and suddenly raised his head to say, "Third brother, now that second brother has already joined the devil, and it is all because of that old demon River Styx. If we want to save him, we have to find out what kind of ambush that old demon has given us the devil skill. I want to test the devil with my own body and find a flaw of the devil's skill. Third brother, this is extremely dangerous, but it is the only way to save Yangda. You must not stop me. If I am also controlled by the devil, find a chance to kill us. Tell esteemed master that your disciple is unfilial. And not only did I not control the devil, I was controlled by the devil, and I have let him down." Before Zhou Chun could stop him, he saw that the vital chi on Lin Ning's body contained a trace of devil chi. However, without Yang Da's demonic saber, he did not immediately join the devil. Only his vital chi changed, and his consciousness was still clear. "Let's go. Let's find second brother." Lin Ning did not say much after he got up. The two of them got on their horses and galloped towards the Ling River. Along the way, there were countless casualties among the slave-building army. The next two checkpoints were filled with rivers of blood, and countless corpses killed by the saber chi piled up into mountains. Even the last virgin Jurchen general, Ajij, who personally led an army of 5,000, was killed by Yang de Lin Ning only found Ajij's withered head in a ditch. A bloody path led from Jianzhou to the Ling River. Just thinking about the scene made Lin Ning shudder. After Yang De joined the devil, when he killed, the enemy's blood would be sucked dry by the demonic saber, turning into his own vital chi, nourishing his vital chi, strengthening his physique, and at the same time, eroding his will to a deeper level. There's almost no bottleneck for him to improve, and he would become stronger with each person he killed. Now, he still had a killing technique and a method to achieve the massacre the heavens, slaughter the earth, and sea of blood that he had yet to comprehend. If he were to comprehend the two devil skills passed down by River Styx, and if he were to kill these 100,000 Jurchen soldiers, how strong would Yangda be? Chapter 542. Below the Great Ling River City, Huang Taiji followed a foreign monk up the high platform and looked at the Great Ling River Castle in the distance. That foreign monk wore a cockscomb hat, held a skull bowl, and was chanting. Looking at his body, he looked like an ordinary person, only his muscles and bones were especially thick. Obviously, he was not a fraud who deceived the world, but an expert whose mana had returned to the original state. The Lama was holding a crystal ball in his right hand. While mumbling, he suddenly raised his head and looked to the south, saying in broken barbarian language, "Your Majesty, there's been a great change in the south that you are concerned about. I see a Han coming this way, and there are two Han following him. They may be the ones you are looking for, but they don't have any magic power. Except for the one in the lead who is a bit strange, the other two are just ordinary people." Huang Taiji was furious and shouted to the people around him, "What are you Tuo and Ajij doing?" The attendant next to him had already figured out Huang Taiji's temper and knew that he didn't want to blame these two trusted generals. He just couldn't bring himself to do it, so he hurriedly knelt on the ground and said, "Master, please calm down. It must be that Han is too cunning and used other means to get past the two of you. But now that your Majesty is here, they can't cross the Great Ling River in front of your Majesty, no matter what evil methods they use." Only then did Huang Taiji calm down a little and shout, "Come here and reprimand these two dog slaves with my decree." When the people next to him heard this, They knew that this matter had been brought up and put down gently, thinking that Yu Tuo and Ajij were indeed Huang Taiji's trusted subordinates. Unexpectedly, the foreign monk next to him said, "Your Majesty, there is no need to send more people." The crystal ball in his hand suddenly emitted a burst of light, projecting the situation of Ajij's camp dozens of miles away. The battlefield was covered with bones, and Ajij's withered head opened his mouth as if he was silently complaining and roaring. If Huang Taiji hadn't recognized his helmet decoration, he wouldn't have been able to tell that it was his appearance. For the first time, Huang Taiji's face became so ferocious. He roared, "Who dares to kill my great Jin warrior?" He almost couldn't stand steadily. This was even more of a blow to him than when he insulted Nurachi yesterday. His pair of small eyes were red, and a rare red glow appeared on his sunken black face. The foreign monk recited a few incantations and reflected the surrounding dozens of miles into his vital spirit with the help of a crystal ball. Then he said calmly, "Your Majesty, your warriors have been wiped out by the enemy." The one who attacked him was one of the 3 Han people. He was cast with a spell and turned into a devil who came to harm you and your army. Only then did Huang Taiji regain his composure and asked seriously, "Does Lord Zeng have a way to kill them? I want to hang their heads on my flag." The foreign monk replied, "Khan, what we should be most wary of now is the shaman who cast the spell on them. They have your warriors to deal with. If I attack them, then when that shaman comes to harm you, who will protect you?" Huang Taiji calmed down and felt that what the foreign monk said made sense. So he ordered, "Pass down my order to the 3 armies. Whoever can kill one of the 3 Han people, I will promote him to be the Merezin of a flag. If he can kill all 3 Han people, I will make him the Gushan Urjin, the leader of a flag. I will do what I say." As soon as such a generous reward was announced, the generals around him immediately became excited and rubbed their palms. Naturally, such a reward would not be given to the soldiers, but to the generals under them. For example, in the future, the Jin would not be the leader of flag. If one could become the leader of flag, he would have countless subordinates under his command. It could be said that he had a high position and power, which had always been exclusive to the Bailey. Now that Huang Taiji dared to let an outsider be the leader of a flag, he was taking a great risk. The group of Zhang Taiji was ready to move. Their eyes became as sharp as a wolf's, exuding a bloodthirsty aura. Huang Taiji secretly nodded. With such morale, what was there to worry about? The warriors under his command were like wolves. Only then could they tear and bite the weak Han people. Suddenly, there was a commotion at the front, and someone reported, "Master, we found a Han person appearing in our sight." Huang Taiji slammed the chopping board and shouted, "Surround him! If you can capture him, then capture him alive. If you can't, then kill him. Increase the troops in the direction of Daling River. If he escapes into the city, each and every one of you will be sentenced to death." He hurriedly looked at the front and only saw some commotion. He suppressed his anger and waited for the news from the generals at the front. From the beginning to the end, he had never considered the consequences of that Han person not going in the direction of Daling River. In his mind, that person would either go to the city or he would try to escape. There was absolutely no third option. The worst-case scenario was that that person would rush into the city, and he, the Khan, would be extremely embarrassed. At this time, he could also take this opportunity to push the responsibility to the subordinates of Amin, Haug, and the others, and use this opportunity to eradicate the dissidents. At the same time, it would infuriate the morale of the army and make them attack Daling River for revenge. Although the casualties were higher than expected, with a smaller population, they could just go to the south. If they lost morale, the good morale that he had built up since his 1,000-mile raid would be destroyed in one day. But Yangda had never thought of sending a letter to Zhu Dasho or turning around to escape. In the eyes of the devil Yangda, there were only 100,000 soldiers and 200,000 commoners here, and they were delicious food. Even if it was not enough, he would not feel that it was too much. His freedom transformation had absorbed the blood essence of more than 10,000 people, and he had advanced to a completely unfamiliar stage. the dragon-capturing orifice located 3 inches away from his right palm, the entrance orifice located 3 inches away from his nose, and the 33 external orifice around him had all absorbed the genuine chi and developed all kinds of special supernatural powers. These supernatural powers were combined with his freedom transformation and invisible knife aura, and turned into a stream of knife aura that seemed to have a substance and could be divided and combined at will. Saber energy could break through his body at any time, and he could even condense chi into a weapon that was sharper than a real divine weapon. With 2 blood-red long sabers in his hands, he suddenly leaped 300 feet, the saber energy expanding and contracting indeterminately. With one breath, dozens of lives would be taken, and with just a scratch, all the essence and blood in the body would be lost. At first, there were still people shouting to kill, but after a quarter of an hour, there were only withered corpses left on the ground, screaming and running for their lives. It was not more than 10,000 Jin soldiers besieging him, but Yangda alone, chasing after these 10,000 or even 100,000 soldiers. In order to kill him, Huang Taiji had set up a reward for Mylirzen, but now there were already 3 Mylirzen who had died under Yangda's saber. It was the remaining people who saw that the situation was not in their favor, so they asked others to protect them and escape. In Yangda's eyes, they only had slightly more essence and blood, which was not worth the essence and blood of 2 people. That was why he did not care about the pursuit. Otherwise, more people would die. Those Jin knew were still savages. Apart from a few aristocrats who were more civilized, the others were still like livestock, barbarians who hugged pigs to survive the winter. Now, they had only been barbarians for a few years, and Yangda's supernatural power was too bloody. After the essence and blood of the corpses were drained, it was easy to imagine that the souls were extracted. In the eyes of these people, Yangda was naturally like a devil. How could a human fight with a devil? Chapter 543. After the previous battle, Deling River Castle was behind Yangda. But now that his demonic aura had seeped into his heart and lungs, he was cold and merciless. He only knew how to kill as soon as he found someone and did not care about this mission. Seeing the Jin army retreating to the main camp and giving him the road to Deling River, he did not hesitate and rushed to the main camp with the most people. The Jiannu elites were scared out of their wits. One of the warriors, "Oh boy," shouted, "Ye knew, the Khan ordered us to surround Deling River Castle and stop the Han people from entering Deling River. Why did you withdraw your troops? If there are no troops to protect the trench walls, once your side is in chaos, Garrison Tulish will also be in chaos. How could just 2 trench walls stop the Han people? If that person leaves, you will be the first sinner of our army." Yinu was still shocked. Hearing Oh Boy's words, he retorted, "Oh boy, that demon is so fierce. Even you, the #1 warrior of Manchuria, do not dare to stop him. Why do you brothers want to die? So what if we let the Han people enter the city? Do you think he can escape from the city just because he's in there?" After Yi Nu finished speaking, he didn't pay any more attention to him. Under the cover of his soldiers, he carefully peeped in Yang Da's direction. Yang Da cast a cold glance at the Ling River Castle, then turned around and transformed into a stream of light, charging into their formation. Yi Nu was scared out of his wits. He wailed and wanted to continue running for his life, but before he could take 2 steps, he was pierced through the back of his heart by a long spear. Oh Boy coldly let go of the spear in his hand. Seeing Yi Nu fall to the ground, he pulled out his saber and shouted, "Brothers, warriors, follow me, Oh Boy, and kill them. Those who disobey, and those who run are like Yi Nu." The surrounding Jin soldiers shouted together and reorganized themselves. Their morale was slightly boosted. "Kill!" Yang Da's figure was wrapped in a circle of bloodlight. Oh Boy raised his saber and wanted to resist, but Yang Da did not even look. A circle of saber chi separated from his protective bloodlight. With just one slash, Oh Boy's saber was broken and he was slashed diagonally into 2. Yang Da had no idea who he had killed with his blade. Along the way, he had already killed a lot of people like this. Now, the surging blood chi in his body rushed into the blood lotus above his head, condensing the void into reality. Suddenly, he comprehended the principle of the first layer of blade light division. He could turn the invisible blade chi into hundreds of blade lights, which could be divided at will, making it even easier to kill people. On the other side, Yangda put his hands together and slashed out hundreds of saber lights. It was like a waterfall of the Milky Way that slowly swept through the army. Everywhere the slave-building soldiers passed by, their blood essence would dry up and they would turn into dried corpses. In a normal war, only after losing 30% of the army would they collapse. They were already extraordinary elites. Now, Yangda's methods were unpredictable and cruel. It was to say that the superstitious female Jin soldiers could survive until now was because they could not to believe them. Now that they had reacted, they could not control themselves and could only run for their lives. Yangda was leisurely reaping lives from behind them. He killed people too quickly, and no one could withstand the demonic blade. His speed was even faster than the deserters. Huang Taiji, who was on the high platform, was shocked to discover that when the front line of soldiers collapsed, there seemed to be an invisible force quietly hiding behind the fleeing soldiers. Without a sound, he could no longer see the dust that was created when the soldiers moved. Huang Taiji's camp was not far from the front line. After a while, Huang Taiji could see a lone figure using his movement technique and killing towards the camp. Although Yangda saw the camp, he did not care and went straight to the place with the most people. The defense in the camp was even tighter. Huang Taiji's younger brother, Duo, was personally holding the line. On his left and right were 4 to 5 shamans and a Han Daoist. When they saw Yangda stepping into the camp and walking towards them, they were filled with killing intent. Seeing this scene, Yangda still smiled and said, "I wonder if you unorthodox people can stop me for half an hour?" Duo did not answer because Yangda was speaking in Han. How could the Jinnu barbarians understand him? The Han cultivator among the 5 suddenly opened his mouth and sneered. What a big tone! A mere mortal who has only been refined with some magic. Yet he dares to be so arrogant. You have killed countless people and have already violated the harmony of heaven. Dying in this Taoist hands can be considered a form of merit. The Taoist stirred the long banner, and a black gas descended from it, turning into a dragon bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws. This fog was refined for miasma. The surrounding Manchu soldiers all smelled a fishy sweetness in their mouths and nostrils before turning into pus. Duo's expression changed. The shaman behind him muttered in barbaric language, and suddenly a few phosphorescent flames rose from the bone chi in his hand, protecting Duo and the others. Yangda did not dodge and allowed the black fog to spread. Very soon, he was lost in the black fog and could not be seen. The Taoist laughed and said, "I can't believe there are such fools in this world, allowing my soul and bone-eroding 5 poison miasma to be used. This miasma contaminates magic power. After 3 breaths, I'm afraid even a piece of refined iron will turn into pus." Duo was all smiles and said in barbaric language, "Master's magic is indeed formidable. I will definitely write to the Khan and ask for your credit." Before his voice had died away, a red light suddenly flashed in the black fog, and a 10-feet-long great boundless saber, chi, pierced through the void. With a flash of light, the Taoist's expression changed greatly. The protective light from the long banner in his hand was split open, and a faintly discernible saber, chi, pierced into his chest. Along with his soul and blood essence, it broke out of his body and killed all the shamans who were close to him. Only the great shaman, standing behind Duo, had 4 phosphorescent flames destroyed. He summoned a white bone pagoda that floated above the 2 men's heads. The other shamans and generals on the left and right were killed with a single breath of the saber chi. The great shaman's expression changed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He said in a panic, "Baylor, that Han man's magic is formidable. I'm afraid I can't defeat him. Master Baylor, quickly go to the Khan for help. I'll stay here and stop this Han man for you. Master Baylor, go quickly. Only Lord Zhangjia, who serves the Khan, can kill this Han man. Baylor, quickly go and ask him for help." Duo had only run a few steps when he saw the pagoda protecting the great shaman behind him shatter, and he was also dismembered by a saber light. The next moment, Duo felt his body lighten, and he suddenly flew up. His vision suddenly turned to a strange angle, and he could see a headless corpse wearing the same clothes as him, its blood essence sucked away by the saber light. He suddenly understood. So that's me. He felt his soul being swallowed up by a bloody light, and he fell into boundless darkness. Huang Taiji, who was on the high platform, suddenly heard someone report, "The Khan. The Central Army has been breached. All the consecrated shamans have been killed by that Han man. Duo and Baylor have unfortunately died. Now the four armies are in chaos. The soldiers are in a mutiny. They're already in a mess, killing each other and running for their lives. That Han is killing anyone he sees. Another 2 Lei and a banner commander have died in his hands. There are even more casualties. The 50,000 troops are almost wiped out." Huang Taiji felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He stood up straight, and his footsteps swayed. He then spat out a mouthful of blood. The guards around him hurried forward to support him. Huang Taiji was still struggling and said with difficulty, "Go and ask the Buddha. Go and ask the great shaman. Take my martial seal and make a decree to worship the Buddha as living Buddhas. Let one of my sons shave his head and become a monk. No matter what, we must ask them to help." River Styx looked at the Jianu's camp from afar. At the same time, his primordial spirit was constantly sensing the mysteries of heaven. Suddenly, he felt the mysteries of heaven move. There were 2 or 3 auras coming towards Liaodong. 2 of them had the mixed psyche power of Buddhism, while the other was the devil path of West Kunlun. There was also some movement in the south of the Central Plains. Yonda did well. Now it's time for me to take action. The Battle of Daling River is the great tribulation of the immortals. If 17 or 18 bald donkey devils, heterodox sects, and even a mystic door of the righteous path don't die, how can it be called the Great Tribulation of the Immortals in 500 years? Chapter 544. The closer the few breaths got, the clearer River Styx's deduction became. He gradually figured out their origins. The 2 barbarian monks were the living Buddhas of the Yellow Sect of the Great Snow Mountain, and the other one was a devil path cultivator of West Kunlun. The 3 of them were quite friendly with each other. It was a joke to say that the 2 monks from the esoteric sect had already cultivated to the Vajra realm of Buddhism, and they had the hope of ascending into the heavens. However, their cultivation was not pure. It was not the authentic great way of Buddhism, but was mixed with many witchcraft, heterodoxy, and even the secret teachings of the devil path. They were surrounded by the reincarnated bodies of the monks from the Great Snow Mountain, and the Dharma protectors refined from the demonic creatures from the Tibetan border. Others might not be able to tell, but River Styx was the ancestor of the devil path, so how could he not see that these things were refined from the secret teachings of the devil path? However, they had modified some parts that were too cruel and used the Dharma and psyche power to cleanse them. However, their foundation was still not pure, and that was why they could not ascend to the upper paradise realm. Sakya's method was far from the Central Plains chi cultivation, but it was very compatible with the devil path. It could be said that it was a thought of Buddhism. When the devil path cultivators converted to Buddhism, and when the eminent monks of Buddhism entered the devil path, they could change their own foundation in a very short period of time. This was inconceivable to the mystic door of Taoism, but when it came to River Styx, he knew that the foundation of Buddhism and devil path were the same, and they had to work on their thoughts, while the mystic door of Taoism was rooted in qi. Whether it was meditation, qi cultivation, or guided visualization, it was all about qi. However, after qi cultivation was successful, the Taoist heart and primordial spirit were tempered and tough. Turning to Buddhism could naturally push the boat along with the current, and there was another benefit. However, the path of Buddhism was full of dangers and hardships. Ultimately, the mystic door sought immortality, unlike Buddhism, which wished to deliver all sentient beings from suffering. They were afraid that their path to immortality would be snatched away by others. There were too many people who cultivated to be celestials, So how could they be like Buddhism, who were willing to pave the way for unorthodox sects or even evil sects to enter the path of Tao? River Styx pondered for a moment. He truly cherished the talents of these two men. They were the most suitable candidates to be refined into a skyscraping demon position in the diagram of deities and demons. Now that he wanted to expand the diagram of deities and demons to 360, he was in dire need of such talents to occupy a position in the diagram of deities and demons. Today, when he saw these two lamas from the Great Snow Mountain, he was thirsty for talents. He wanted to send these two living Buddhas to be liberated and become Buddhas, staying in the celestial demon diagram for a long time to enlighten all living beings. It could also be considered as fulfilling the great wish of the Buddhist sect to deliver all living beings from suffering. It was truly a virtuous deed and the greatest kindness. Moreover, if he invited these two living Buddhas into the diagram first, then their disciples and grand disciples, as well as the numerous cultivators hidden by the Great Snow Mountain, and the dozens of living Buddhas would all be in his bag. If they were refined into the diagram together, the diagram of deities and demons would immediately have some hope of achieving great success. With this thought, River Styx was overwhelmed with excitement. He spread out the diagram of deities and demons of the 9 heavens and 10 earths and covered the Daling River battlefield. The skyscraping demons transformed into Jurchen barbarians and Great Ming defending generals. The Yin demons transformed into the Ming army's golden soldiers. The formation in the diagram of deities and demons was spread out, restoring the Daling River battlefield to its original state. If the 3 immortals and 2 elders were here, they might have seen some flaws, but the skyscraping demon path of Buddhism was only based on thoughts. Under normal circumstances, it had some resistance to the Yin demons of illusion, but when faced with a demon ancestor like River Styx, it was more restrained. This was because the Tao of Taoism was outside the world, but the true Buddha of Buddhism was in the heart. The Tao of heaven and earth was not easy to transform, but the true Buddha in the heart was easy to deceive. Therefore, the first difficulty of Buddha was always the illusion of skyscraping demon, the sins of all living beings. For someone as inferior as River Styx to transform into the demon king of Mahesvara, it was enough to block the path of Buddha, not to mention deceiving a few miscellaneous cultivators and Vajra of the external path. The 2 living Buddhas of the Great Snow Mountain had just entered Liaodong when they saw the Buddha's light shooting up into the sky. On the ground, there were golden lotuses, sky lanterns, heavenly flowers, heavenly maidens, treasure lids, sandalwood incense, and chanting. They dyed the mountains and rivers in a radius of 10 miles into pure gold. Countless beasts and livestock rushed towards the Buddha's light, and all the filthy things on the ground were melted away. The 7 treasures of colored glass, gold, and coral paved the way. There was no killing, no evil thoughts, and no sinlessness. The clear colored glass light shone in all directions. No matter who saw it, they would have to say, "What a scene of extreme bliss." The 2 living Buddhas of the Great Snow Mountain were surprised. Why is there such a blissful scene in the secular world? We were carried away by a whim and felt that the opportunity for our sect to prosper was about to be cut off, so we rushed here. We thought that the Jurchen Khan, Huang Taiji, was in trouble, but who would have thought that it would be such a magnificent scene? The Buddhist kingdom of Western Paradise is nothing more than this. Immediately, the lotus light descended, and the shadow of a Buddhist building appeared in the west the moment their feet touched the ground. It was an immeasurable ancient temple, as tall as the sky and the earth. The flying eaves of the roof stood side by side with the sun, but it seemed to be right in front of them, and they could push the temple door open with a push. It seemed to be on the top of a mountain, but it also seemed to be right beside them. The 2 living Buddhas were shocked. Why couldn't they see such a tall temple from the sky? Just as they were about to push the door open and enter, they realized that the distance between them and the ancient temple only increased until the living Buddha on the left had an idea. He looked up and saw the plaque of the temple clearly, Mount Meru Small Thunder Temple. Only then was his heart shaken and he put his palms together and said, "This Mount Meru is not in the sky, nor is it in front of us, but in our hearts." After saying this, he let go of the obsession in his heart and opened his eyes again. He saw River Styx's heavenly demon primordial spirit transforming into the clear glazed sun and moonlight Buddha, sitting in the middle of the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood. He sat on a golden lotus, and the infinite thunder, sound, Zen chant came from his mouth. The golden lotuses flowed in all directions, supporting soldiers in ragged clothes, some of which were even stained with blood. The ground under his feet was like a battlefield, but also like a spiritual mountain. The soldiers who just walked down from the battlefield put their palms together. There were Jurchens, and there were also soldiers from the Great Ming Dynasty. They were devoutly chanting along with the Buddha in the middle. There were also bears, tigers, jackals, rabbits, deer, and small animals. All of them were kneeling at the feet of the Buddha, listening attentively. Even though the jackals were hungry and the deer was just beside them, they did not show their bestial nature. Just as he was in a daze, the other living Buddha also entered the Mount Meru Thunder Temple. He was also inexplicably shocked, and he could not help but sit down cross-legged to listen to the Buddhist sound Zen chant. However, when they listened carefully, they only felt that the Buddhist sound was sometimes loud and sometimes soft, sometimes by their ears and sometimes at the sky. Even though they were immersed in the boundless essence, they could not remember a single word. The two of them were so anxious that they scratched their ears and cheeks in extreme pain. When they saw the peaceful faces of the people around them, as if they had understood something, they became even more anxious. River Styx sang for a total of 3 days, planting the heavenly demons' demonic sound firmly in their thoughts, infecting and demonizing them. Gradually, it controlled a bit of their original selves, and through the anxiety and scratching feeling, it sensed the restlessness, anger, and other external demons in their hearts. Chapter 545. Seeing that it was sufficient, River Styx stopped his preaching and said in a thunderous voice, "I have been preaching for 9 days. Have you learned anything? If you have any questions, you can ask me." The 2 living Buddhas could not hold it in any longer. Hearing his permission, they asked hurriedly, "The teachings of the revered one are profound, but why can't we remember a single word of it when we hear the mantra, big and small, near and far?" River Styx smiled and said, "That's because your mind is uncertain. I preach to all living beings from the heart, and the Zen sound are preaching to the heart. If your heart is anxious, Mount Meru will be 90 million feet tall, and even the thunderous sound of the Dharma will be as soft as a mosquito. If your heart is moved, Mount Meru will also tremble, and naturally it will be near and far. This Laim temple is not in the various worlds, nor is it in the Buddhist kingdom. It is only in your mind. As for why your heart can't hear a single word of it," River Styx made a hand sign and smiled. "It's because your heart doesn't know what to listen to. Those who seek good karma will naturally feel good karma. Umitba." The group of defeated soldiers put their palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. "Those who seek afterlife will naturally feel the afterlife. Umitba." The group of wandering ghosts who died in battle also chanted in unison. "Those who seek enlightenment from the Dharma will naturally listen to my teachings." Chirp, chirp, chirp. It was a bunch of animal language, and countless animals made all kinds of sounds. Buddha is in the heart, not in front of your eyes. Ma Dwajya. Listen to your heart, and you will naturally hear the pure Zen singing. There is a circle of clear glass light on top of River Styx's head, and endless sunlight and moonlight were released from his shoulders. He had indeed made a grand appearance. The sky demon's primordial spirit was also formed from thoughts. With a thought of Buddha and demon, it was naturally not a difficult task to transform into the clear glass light and moonlight King Dharma form. After listening to his lies, the foreign monk Mat Dwajya really calmed down and listened to the trace of sky demon in his own consciousness. He focused his mind on one of the 36 sky demons in this world. Sure enough, he immediately fell in love with the sky demon. He felt that all his questions had been answered, and he couldn't help but burst into tears. The heavenly demon explained magic to him and personally distorted his foundation. Gradually, a round light appeared behind Madorj's head, and his body emitted a fragrance. Even the protector beside the Dharma idol turned his hostility into harmony. The most troublesome mixed demonic chi and demonic chi were all transformed into pure Buddhist psyche. Of course, this was only on the surface. In reality, Madorj had directly refined it into the celestial demon diagram. The God Fiend diagram was a Dharma treasure for a sky fiend to attain the Tao. Refining a mere God Fiend was naturally a trivial matter. Even the mystique that Ma Duo Jie desired the most was reflected by the demonic will. He borrowed the countless demons and devils in the celestial demon diagram, as well as his own tainted wisdom to deduce it. Ma Duo Jie saw that the private Buddha Deva Dharma Guardian monastery that he cultivated, borrowing the Dharma arts of all Dharma guardians, gods, and devils, had suddenly transformed into a grand vow, like a dome, covering all Dharma realms. It could use all kinds of miraculous forms to illuminate all fated beings. There was no longer a trace of doubt in his heart. He immediately praised the revered one and modified his foundation Dharma. He chanted Buddhist mantras, and the light behind his head shone brightly. The beasts, lonely souls, and even the Jurchen elite soldiers and the Ming dynasty soldiers seemed to have sensed his Buddhist mantra. They turned into a Dharma idol and hung behind his head. The countless devils in the God Fiend diagram entered the Buddhist light behind his head, and the two sides refined each other. Madorj felt that these enlightened Dharma idols were continuously providing him with pure vow power. Even the sentient beings in this realm that had thoughts that were compatible with his also turned into pure psyche power for him. He did not know that these were devils formed from the sentient thoughts of sentient beings. He only thought that they were sentient beings that he had sensed. As he devoutly enlightened sentient beings, he borrowed the psyche power to cultivate. In just a few moments, his mana increased greatly, and he refined himself into a heavenly demon in the God Fiend diagram. Before he succeeded, he felt that the supreme light in his heart was perfected. Suddenly, the Bodhi heart was activated. The ferocious and horrifying Vajra Dharma form behind him suddenly turned and transformed into a benevolent and peaceful big-bellied Arhat. As the Dharma idols he enlightened chanted Buddhist mantras together, they completely erased their sense of self and turned into a heavenly demon of river Styx. At this moment, this heavenly demon with the foundation of Buddhism turned his own self and soul into a large amount of pure heavenly demon psyche power and provided it to river Styx. Suddenly, 360 pure heavenly demon psyche power was transformed from his countless thoughts and entered into river Styx's heavenly demon primordial spirit to replenish the 120,000 missing thoughts and mana. River Styx felt that this demon could still refine devils endlessly to provide psyche power for himself. In a night, the psyche power provided could refine about 3 heavenly demon psyche power. Suddenly, he understood the principle of Buddhism and demon opposing each other. He thought to himself, so, when I enlighten the disciples of Buddhism to become the heavenly demon under my command, there are such benefits. They can provide me with an endless supply of psyche power. If I refine Whitebrow, Zun Sheng, and Xian Ru, wouldn't my cultivation experience increase tremendously? If I refine all the living beings in this world, even if the Buddha from the upper realm descends, I can beat him up like a dog. What a pity! I'm afraid I won't agree to it. The disciples of the demon sect are also a bunch of useless people. They should have been cultivating their psyche power, but they insisted on learning from the mystic door to cultivate their chi and primordial spirit. They only left behind a small path of God Fiend that can still be used. The disciples of Buddhism in this world are like fat lambs to me. Eating one of them is a great supplement. These 2 foreign monks did not have a high cultivation experience in Buddhism. They relied on unorthodox methods to cultivate the Vajra Dharma form, and they are still so nourishing. Furthermore, they can refine the God-Fiend diagram for me. River Styx secretly opened his eyes and looked at the other living Buddha. His eyes were green like a wolf's. The big monk will teach the little monk, and the big living Buddha will cultivate the little monk. Then, the little monk and the little monk will grow into the big monk and the big living Buddha. There will be endless children and grandchildren. In the end, they will all ascend to my God-Fiend diagram and become heavenly demons. Isn't this a beautiful future? Who knows? I'll have to become a Buddha and open up a Western paradise to educate all living beings. The more River Styx thought about it, the more he felt that the bald head was cute. The Buddha that he transformed into was also becoming more and more amiable. The other living Buddha from the Great Snow Mountain did not last long either. By now, he'd been mostly refined. River Styx decided to use his chi to activate the endless demons, heavenly demons, and godly demons in the God-Fiend diagram. The living Buddha's consciousness did not even struggle before it was forcefully refined. The boundless Buddha diagram suddenly turned into a scroll in River Styx's hands. The two living Buddhas who had just entered had now turned into heavenly demon godly forms and were suspended in the diagram. Sensing the sudden increase of pure psyche power in his primordial spirit, River Styx smiled even more benevolently. There was not a single trace of devil chi on his body. He looked like an eminent monk. There are endless distracting thoughts in the God-Fiend diagram. In the past, my energy was limited and I could only refine 1 in 100,000 of them. Now that I have enlightened the bald donkey to become a Buddha, they can help me refine the distracting thoughts and demons into pure psyche power. A heavenly demon like this is like another me. Moreover, the changes in supernatural power are not the same as the heavenly demons I refined in the past. I still have to turn those old heavenly demons into Buddhas once, and then turn them into heavenly demons. Only then can they help me refine the distracting thoughts and provide me with psyche power. Although it is easy to convert between devil and Buddha, it will take me decades of hard work. River Styx pondered and said, "It is better to capture the bald donkey to refine the demons. It is more convenient and faster than refining the demons myself. I will plant a seed of Buddhism inheritance and establish a sect. Within 100 years, it will probably provide me with 3 Vajra. If I let them grow for 500 years, I might be able to produce an Arhat. However, this is too risky. It is better to harvest them in the Vajra realm. The good thing about this business is that there is an endless supply. It is like farming to harvest heavenly demons." River Styx calculated and felt that this was a good business. He released a living Buddha that he had just refined and asked, "How many Buddhist cultivators above the Vajra realm are there in the Great Snow Mountain? Are there any Arhats? Bodhisattvas?" The heavenly demon replied, "There are millions of believers in the Yellow Sect and hundreds of thousands of disciples. However, there are only 19 of my level of cultivation. They're all titled living Buddhas. There are also 3 venerables whose cultivation is above mine. They're the Arhat state that the demonic lord mentioned. It is said that there's a patriarch who cultivates in seclusion whose cultivation is unfathomable. However, I do not know the truth." River Styx calculated with his fingers and released another newly refined heavenly demon, Madhwajya. He said, "The 2 of you will sneak back to the Great Snow Mountain and secretly attack those bald donkeys who have the same cultivation as you. You can first teach them the grand vow, like a canopy, overturn all Dharma realms. Let them enlighten the believers and absorb their psyche power for cultivation. I have my secret hand on this technique. When they have cultivated to a certain realm, they will definitely be able to sense the celestial demon diagram. When the time comes, you can activate the celestial demon diagram and secretly refine them. At first, you can refine one of them in about 6 months. When you have gathered 6 people, set up the little heavenly demon formation and receive the projection of the realm of desire in the celestial demon diagram. The time will be greatly reduced. When I am free, I will let the 2 of you become Buddhas. When the time comes, carefully train the younger generation. When they have become Vajra, You can lead the others to refine them. Chapter 546. The heavenly demon Ma duo Jie had just moved a few hundred miles when they saw a grayish-black conveyance light in front of them. They stopped and saw the conveyance light vanish, revealing a Buddha wearing white bone prayer beads on his head. Although he was dressed like a Buddhist, his foundation of magic power was mixed. He had the foundation of the breathing technique of the mystic door, and there were also traces of the meditation power of Buddhism. He was definitely a person from the unorthodox school. The unorthodox school did not care about meat and vegetables, and they did not expect to ascend. Therefore, it was not important for them to purify their Taoist foundation. Most of the unorthodox school people had already given up the hope of immortality and ascension. They only wanted to practice an invincible magical power in this life so that they could be at ease. There was no choice when it came to cultivation. Most of the time, they would practice whatever magic power was powerful. As a result, some of the unorthodox schools, at a lower level, had magic power that was even more powerful than that of the orthodox mystic door. Even the orthodox schools were afraid of their disciples making mistakes, so they did not dare to teach some powerful magic power. The unorthodox schools were really unscrupulous. This Buddha Tiger Zen was one of them. He was basically a Taoist, but he envied the powerful magic power of the devil school, so he practiced some magic of the devil school. Later, he became friends with Ma Duo Jie and the others, and also practiced some Buddhism. Although he had a variety of methods, practiced a powerful sword technique, and was proficient in several vicious magic power, he had no hope of going further. Now, all he wanted to do was to practice a superb spell or refine a powerful magic weapon to protect himself and survive the 4-9 great tribulations of the immortals every 500 years. Then, he could roam freely for another few hundred years. Ma Duo Jie stopped the rainbow light and asked with a smile, "Oh, it's the venerable Tiger Zen. Senior brother and I are preparing to return to the Great Snow Mountain to practice. May I know what the venerable called us for? If there is nothing, we still have to leave." Seeing that they were so impatient, Tiger Zen's original guess was confirmed. He hurriedly said, "Masters, please don't be in a hurry. I had some fate with the Jurchen chief Huang Taiji. I saw that he had some luck, and the Jurchen dragon Qi was faintly formed. In the future, he would definitely cause some trouble for the Ming dynasty in the Central Plains. I wanted to take this opportunity to collect some evil blood Qi and borrow some souls to practice a heavenly soul-sucking magic. But just now my soul sensed that Huang Taiji is in trouble, so I came to investigate. I know that the two of you have been interested in that slave for a long time. You want to take advantage of the rise of the Jurchen to promote the Yellow Sect. The Buddhism in the Central Plains is xenophobic. Korea, Siam, and Japan are the places where the Vinaya sect and the Pure Land sect appear. They denounce the Orthodox sect that the two of you came from as heretical. If we don't take advantage of the rise of the Jurchen, it will be difficult for us to intervene. Since the two senior brothers came from the north, they must have seen Huang Taiji's life and death. Can you let me know so that I don't have to run back and forth?" Ma Duojie pretended to ponder for a moment and looked at his senior brother awkwardly. Tiger-chan was also tactful. He just smiled and waited patiently at the side. As if remembering their friendship, Ma Duojie sighed and said, "Huang Taiji has only lost one match and is not in danger yet. Since Venerable Tiger-chan has called us over, there must be something else." Only then did Tiger-chan nod and admit, "I have just calculated once. Huang Taiji's fate is indeed like this. I can only faintly sense that the place where he is at has boundless auspiciousness. It has the appearance of a heavenly maiden and a golden flower. When I calculate again, I can only see a vast and boundless golden lotus covering that heavenly secret. I can't calculate anything else. The golden lotus is a Buddha statue. Since the two of you came from there, you must have gained something. Senior brother should also know that I, Tiger-chan, have the heart of Buddha. I wonder if you can enlighten me a little." Ma Duojie made a Lianhua seal. He was already one of the sky demons on the celestial demon diagram. Naturally, he could borrow the power of this rare magic treasure to turn it into a golden lotus and wrap the three of them up. When Tiger Chan saw this golden lotus, he was even more certain that the two of them must have gained something amazing. Sure enough, according to Ma Dwajia, when the two of them arrived at the Liaodong battlefield, they had gained something else. It turned out that the bloody chi of the battlefield and the evil chi of the army had aroused the response of a Buddhist treasure underground. It produced some changes on its own, causing a lianhua to bloom on the battlefield and dispel the filth. However, such an auspicious treasure countered Huang Taiji's fate, so he was momentarily depressed and lost. After the two of them arrived at the battlefield, they found the Buddhist treasure through these clues. Now, they were preparing to invite it back to the Great Snow Mountain of the Yellow Sect to suppress the sect's fate. Tiger Chan immediately bowed down and said, "Tiger Chan's heart is eager to Buddha. I dare not count on this Buddhist treasure, nor do I hope to see it. It's just that I was a step late and missed this treasure. I'm filled with regret. I only hope that the two of you can enlighten me on the Dharma from this treasure." Let Tiger Chan also listen to this extraordinary Buddhist truth. What he asked for was not excessive. Moreover, Tiger Chan was not much weaker than either of them. With the two of them here, they were not afraid of him snatching it. Therefore, Ma Dwajia smiled and said, "What Venerable Tiger Chan is asking for is not difficult. Even if Venerable Tiger Chan takes a look at it, it's not a big deal. Even if Venerable Tiger Chan wants to use this to comprehend, I believe it won't be difficult as long as you join our sect." With a shake of his right hand, a golden lotus bloomed in his palm. He picked it up and handed it to Tiger Chan for him to look at. When Duda Tiger Chan looked at the golden lotus, he suddenly felt a supreme light in his heart. A spell of hundreds of Sanskrit words flowed into his heart. After a little comprehension, he found that it was a wonderful method to control the thoughts of the primordial spirit. It could turn one's primordial spirit into a Buddha of the outer path. Then, the Dharma would not be so heterogeneous and would not be affected by the Taoist and Devil's Foundation. He only needed to use the pure light of the golden lotus to get through the initial moment when his thoughts were at their weakest, so that he would not be harmed by the heavenly demons. Tiger Chan was overjoyed and did not think too much. He was friends with Ma Dwajia and knew that they had long wanted to pull him into the Yellow Sect and become a Dharma protector of the outer path. However, Duda Tiger Chan had always disliked being restricted, so he did not agree. Now that he had obtained such a benefit and had the foundation of the Dharma, his position in the sect could be discussed in the future. In this case, he might as well be a family with them. Why should he be afraid of being harmed by them? This was to receive the pure light of Buddha emitted by the heavenly demons in the picture of gods and demons to cleanse his mixed thoughts. As soon as the heavenly demon divine light entered his soul, Duda Tiger Chan immediately understood countless dharma. Greed, hatred, obsession, desire, and evil immediately surged into his heart. In front of the two heavenly demons, how good could the fate of receiving the heavenly demon divine light into his primordial spirit be? In just a moment, his original self would be erased, and his primordial spirit would be refined into a heavenly demon. However, his foundation was not pure, so it would be difficult for him to transform into a Buddha. For the time being, he could not provide psyche power to river Styx. When his primordial spirit was converted into a Vajra, river Styx would be able to reap another harvest. Hundreds of miles away, the old demon river Styx held the picture of gods and demons in his hand and nodded with a gratified smile. He knew that he had taken another step forward in the great way of the heavenly demon. Chapter 547. General Zhu, there seems to be some movement in the slave Jin camp. A deputy general reported to Zhu Dasho. Oh, Zhu Dasho stood up from his desk and quickly walked out of the tent towards the top of the city wall. At the same time, he asked, "Are they building that wall again? Or are they redeploying their troops to attack Deling River Castle again? That Huang Taiji is a cunning person. How many people in the slave Jin camp are there? They definitely won't be so unwise. Sigh, I wonder when the imperial court's reinforcements will arrive." The deputy general hesitated and said, "General, could it be related to the heavenly voice from yesterday?" Zhu Daso laughed and said, I'm very familiar with this Wu Zhuan. The voice is indeed his, but how can he have the courage to insult the chief? I'm afraid he's still worried about begging for mercy from the Jurchen after his defeat. He's just a mediocre person and can't be of much use. If he comes to save me, as long as the enemy shows the ability to defeat him, he will retreat. On the other hand, his son Wu Sangue has the feeling of a dog father and a tiger's son, but he's just a tiger among dogs. Zhu Dasho stood at a high place and looked into the distance. As expected, he saw smoke and dust billowing from the Jurchen camp. The flags seemed to have fallen to the ground. There seems to be some movement. Zhu Dasho pondered and said, could it be that the Imperial Corps has other reinforcements that I don't know about? Yang Da's blood and chi exploded like a beacon that shot up to 100 feet into the sky. The boundless blood light was swallowed by the red lotus. His eyes were emotionless and calm to the extreme, but the demonic nature in his soul was also crazy to the extreme. This calm and crazy demonic light of wisdom allowed him to control a copious amount of saber aura and slashed dozens of times. Each saber was sharp and unpredictable. Now that his demonic arts had absorbed the essence and blood of tens of thousands of people, he had reached great heights. The great art of massacre had been tempered by the lives of these tens of thousands of people, and it had also honed an exquisite killing intent. The demonic saber had entered the realm of unpredictability. He had the shapeless saber aura and also the saber demon. He had reached the point where there was nothing in the world that he couldn't kill. Even Yang Da's greatest shortcoming, the wisdom of the martial path, was no longer a shortcoming because he had sensed the 30-odd sky demons in the unseen world, which was equivalent to him gaining sentience from the endless battles of the Yin demons in the Central Plains. Yang Da, who had turned into a devil, was far more tyrannical than his normal self. Under normal circumstances, Yang Da could only rely on a bit of bravery to fight against two cultivators of the same cultivation level as him. He could even take the risk of getting injured and kill one of them. How could he be as emotionless and thoughtless as he was now, unhindered by anything and able to unleash his strength to an unfathomable level? Relying on various kinds of inconceivable supernatural powers of the Sky Devil, he was able to fight this foreign monk, whose cultivation and magical power were countless times higher than his, for hundreds of rounds without falling into a disadvantageous position. If not for the relationship between him and Chun Ong as a master and disciple, the Sky Devil would have long demonized Yang Da's body, causing it to undergo an irreversible transformation. His body would grow scales and flesh armor, and he would be able to breathe devil energy, making his corporeal body several hundred times stronger than before. With the addition of supernatural powers, such as heavenly ghosts, deities, and demons, he would have long killed this old lama. But because of this limitation, both of them were in a stalemate. If not for Yang Da being able to kill the nearby soldiers to recover his strength and injuries, he would have long fallen into a disadvantageous position. But now, all the soldiers who dared to come near them were all killed, and Yang Da's situation was getting more and more dangerous. Huang Taiji watched the battle from afar, his eyes filled with hatred as he stared at Yang Da, as if he wanted to tear him apart alive. He bit his lower lip, drank the blood from his mouth, and said with a smile, "Anyone who dares to come near Lord Zheng and the demon will be killed. Killed without mercy. That demon has no blood to replenish himself, and Lord Zheng has gained the upper hand. We are about to win." Looking at the soldiers around him, who were in a sorry state and had their banners in disarray, he couldn't help but feel depressed. There were only a few hundred of them left, but he had 50,000 elite soldiers, and there were 50,000 servants from a Mongolian and Han army. He suffered such an undeserved disaster, and it was all caused by one person. How could he not be heartbroken? He almost let out a long howl, but he didn't dare to do so. After such a huge defeat, the few Bailey who had already lost their power would definitely make a move. If he allowed them to take the opportunity of his falling prestige to contact their old subordinates, his position as Khan might not be stable. Even if he could stabilize the headquarters, after this huge defeat, the strength of the headquarters would decline, and those Mongolian tribes who had already surrendered would have strange ideas. The prestige of the Great Ming was already far greater than the influence of the Jurchen. If it was not stable, the Jurchen might lose their control over the Mongolian tribes. Therefore, Huang Taiji could only bear with it. He couldn't show any signs of fatigue or weakness. Both inside and outside of the Great Jin were wolves who were eyeing them covetously. Even these generals who seemed to be loyal to him, when he showed a hint of weakness, could turn into wolves and bite the flesh and blood they desired the most. Power, especially those ambitious brothers of his. At this time, Huang Taiji suddenly saw two silhouettes standing not too far away from him. A Han man sat on a horse and looked at him coldly. Before Huang Taiji could react, he saw a shadow quickly float over from the horse. It was so fast that even with the elites around him, none of them were able to fire an arrow. The group of Jurchen generals only felt their vision blur, and then they saw a person in front of them. "There's an assassin," the guards on the left and right shouted. Among them, there were also people who were highly skilled in martial arts. They knew that this kind of lightness skill was shocking. Fortunately, it didn't seem to be a demon that couldn't be stopped by human strength. They still stood in front of him loyally. But how could Li Ning, who had tried to become a demon, be ordinary? He wasn't as scary and inhumane as Yongda, but when he attacked, he was more ruthless. It was this ruthlessness that made his martial arts more than 10 times stronger. The long sword in the case was suddenly unsheathed at an unimaginable speed. The light of the sword only made a turn in front of the guards, and Li Ning had already passed them without stopping. At this moment, a line of blood appeared on the neck of the guards, and they fell in shock. Li Ning seemed to have entered an uninhabited land. Even though Huang Taiji and his left and right rushed forward, they only fell one by one. Huang Taiji saw a banner leader die. Another bay, Li's head fly up. Some ran, some died. He only felt a burst of dizziness. He wished he could die at that man's hands immediately, but he quickly came back to his senses and ran forward 10 times more resolutely. Li Ning's eyes were faintly red, and the sword in his hand was even fiercer. The long sword in his hand was not the one that River Styx had given him. It was just a fine iron sword that cost 30 taels of silver from a normal blacksmith. In his hand, it was protected by his vital qi. It could break through countless armor, and it could still kill. Countless of Huang Taiji's guards tried to protect him, and Li Ning's sword was already bleeding like a river. However, Huang Taiji still managed to escape further and further away. He let out a fierce roar, and his Zhen Qi increased by 30%. The edge of his sword emitted a 3 feet long blood-red sword aura, and more than 10 people who were blocking his way were cut in half. At this point, no one could stand between Huang Taiji and Li Ning. Huang Taiji's face was filled with despair, and he shouted, "No!" When Zhou Chun saw Li Ning's cold and sharp eyes, just like Yang Da's, and the vital qi on his body was faintly covered with devil qi, he couldn't help but become anxious. Ignoring the fact that Huang Taiji was about to be killed, he suddenly summoned a protective Buddhist psyche power and shouted, "Wake up!" Li Ning's voice sounded like a great bell ringing in his ears. He was stunned subconsciously, and the long sword in his hand suddenly shattered without the protection of his vital qi. Huang Taiji hurriedly took this opportunity to lie flat on his horse. The guards around him were ready to rush forward to stop him again. Li Ning had no choice but to shake the long sword with all his strength. His vital qi wrapped in countless shards, and with an extremely powerful technique, he threw them forward. Most of the shards were blocked by the guards who rushed forward with their bodies, and only a few hit Huang Taiji's back. At this time, Li Ning's mind was clear, and he just watched as Huang Taiji was surrounded by the crowd as they shouted, "Protect the Khan!" The battle between Yongda and the head lama had also reached the most dangerous moment. Yongda didn't have any blood essence to replenish his vital qi, and his vital qi was getting more and more exhausted. Although he had been polished more smoothly, he was still a little bit weaker than the lama. Seeing that Huang Taiji was in danger, the head lama attacked even more fiercely. Disregarding the injury to his source, He struck out 10 big handprints in a row, smashing Yang Da's saber chi and then condensing it again. For a moment, it was less fierce. The llama's eyes became even fiercer. Regardless of Huang Taiji's imminent danger, he still wanted to take the opportunity to kill Yang Da. At this critical moment, a hateful voice that was very familiar to the three elites of Qilu and Lu suddenly came from Adair. It said, "Where did this damn bald donkey come from? How dare you bully the weak and bully my three martial nephews? As their martial uncle, I can't stand it." Then, an extremely fast, blood-red flowing light fell from the sky, curled around the llama, and swallowed him into a scroll. Yang Da saw that the martial uncle only shook the scroll in his hand a few times, and the llama's scream disappeared without a trace. Looking at the three elites of Qilu and Lu who were in a sorry state, River Styx laughed and said, "The three martial nephews are indeed young and handsome. You didn't disappoint martial uncle and the others, and you killed the daughters of the Jian dynasty until their blood flowed like a river. Especially Yang Da. He really has the demeanor of our generation. Are you willing to become martial uncle's disciple and learn the way of slaughtering all living beings and destroying the world by the heavenly devil?" Yang Da looked at the smiling River Styx, and the demonic thoughts in his eyes suddenly surged. Without knowing the direction, he rode on the saber chi and disappeared into the south like a flowing light. Chapter 548. River Styx had already sent this information to the skyscraping devil that sensed Dorgan. Immediately, Dorgan's inner demonic spirit changed. When Dorgan was alive, he was cunning and ambitious. Now that his inner self was devoured by the skyscraping devil, he was 10 times more vicious than when he was alive. Huang Taiji was still alive, but now he was half dead. River Styx calculated that he would be controlled by Dorgan sooner or later. Originally, he needed to use some evil schemes. Now he just needed to bribe the general of the Jinnu headquarters and unite with the deposed Amin, Haug, and the others. So what if he killed the Khan and seized power according to the Jurchen tradition? This plan was open and above board. For the Han people who valued orthodoxy, of course, it was difficult to accept. However, for the Jurchen, they had their own tradition, so it was not difficult for them to accept it. After Dorgan seized power, not only would he not help River Styx control the Jurchen, but he would also use the evil energy of his demonic spirit to expose the truth of River Styx's scheme. At that time, he would contact the living Buddhas of the Mongolian, Tubo, and the Great Snow Mountain tribes to secretly collude with the Devil Path and seek revenge on River Styx. This was the official feast of the Liaodong Tribulation. The 3 people who died in the Battle of Daling River were just appetizers. They did not deserve the name of the tribulation of the 4 Nine Immortals. Moreover, Dorgan was doing his best because the Styx wanted to use himself as bait to lure out the Lord God's backup plan. No matter how covert the Master God was, he had to get in touch with Dorgan from the Jurchen side. Although River Styx was the bait and Dorgan was the hook, if the bait was as ferocious as River Styx, he would probably eat the fish together. River Styx's vital spirit predicted that a few individual immortals from the orthodox path and unorthodox path of the Central Plains would arrive soon. The situation was set. River Styx turned into a bloodlight and fled. In the air, he suddenly transformed the power of the sky demon method into a strand of demonic spirit and sneaked into people's hearts. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the sky. 3 minutes later, at the place where River Styx disappeared, ascetic Duda showed up with the invisible sword light. Another 2 beams of light followed from behind. They were by Gai and Jumei. They both stopped in midair. By Gai teased, "Ascetic Duda, you actually let that old devil escape even though you hid invisible sword beams in the sky. Ever since you learned the formless sword escape from the Tai Ching mystic door, no one could detect your formless sword light. You've been successful in every endeavor and eradicated countless evil demons, but you failed today." Ascetic Duda sighed and said, "I didn't have the confidence to make a move in the first place. I just faintly felt that the old devil seemed to have discovered us, so I made a move to test him. I told you to fall behind a few hundred miles, but he just happened to disappear 10 feet away from the formless sword. It seems like he really has a way to break the Tai Ching mystic door and has the formless sword escape. With this harvest, it's not a waste of time to come. Zhu Mei's expression was a little solemn. He stroked his beard and said, "Ascetic old man, your formless sword escape is different from a junior like Monk Shao. You've trained it to the point where it's invisible and intangible, formless and colorless. Are you really sure that the old devil saw through you?" That river Styx first shed his drought demon body and achieved the supreme demon body of Great Azura. He obtained the Blood God Sutra that Xianyuan the Great found somewhere and cultivated the Blood Sea primordial spirit that couldn't be killed. At that time, he was already the number one person of the demon path in this world. I heard that the demons that cultivated in seclusion in West Kunlun all called him the Yuquan Blood Devil. After that, he was beaten out of the four seas by Chun'ong of the primordial Narcissus. After he escaped to Middle-earth, his cultivation didn't decrease, but increased instead. The white-browed divine monk, Zen Master Zuansheng, and divine nun Yutan worked together to calculate his background, but they only managed to fight against his incarnation of the Mahasvara heavenly devil several times in the Heaven Secrets. It was extremely dangerous. The few divine monks were plotted against by him, using the devil Luoboxen as a Buddha and gave a Buddhist scripture of total destruction. Only then did they know that this person had already achieved the supreme Tao fruit of the Sky Devil, and his magical power was unbelievably vast. The Sky Devil broke the law and ended the law. The fate was the most compatible with the tribulations. Now that his fate was compatible with the 4-9 great tribulations of the immortals, along with the evolution of the tribulations, the progress of his supernatural power and magical power was immeasurable. Senior brother and senior Yin Zimu estimated his background and guessed that he might not be the original drought demon Gu Haozi. Instead, when Gu Haozi broke through to the Sky Devil, he attracted the tribulation of the Sky Devil and the Sky Man, and his original self was swallowed by the devil. I don't know which Sky Devil King's incarnation came to the world and attracted the tribulation. He prayed to the Patriarch, but he didn't get the decree from the Patriarch. That is to say, it's highly possible that Devil Luoboxen came in person. Zhu Mei also sighed and said, "If it wasn't for Longbrow Saint's message, asking us to trust the Chun'ong of the primordial Narcissus, I would definitely suspect that these two people are related. But since Jinren said so, it's absolutely impossible." Zhu Mei said this as if she didn't doubt Longbrow Saint at all. However, the two people beside her didn't seem to have any objection. Obviously, they agreed with what she said. That Chun'ong fellow wants to refine a furnace of treasures to control the devil to deal with the tribulation caused by the devil. He sent me a message the day before yesterday. The 4 treasures of the first furnace have been produced, and now he went to look for the fated person. Yesterday, I also calculated that one of them actually has some fate with senior brother Zunzenzi's first disciple, Zhuge Jing. Another one has fallen into the hands of a Jianzhou army commander's son, and the other 2 also have their own masters. Ascetic Duda frowned and said, "This kind of treasure belongs to the tribulation. I don't know how many difficulties and obstacles there are. Karma and luck are on it, and there is also the involvement of the Sky Devil. I actually can't calculate whether it's good or bad. I only know that this kind of treasure is the hope to save your life in the future, but it could also be a life-threatening talisman. It can help you achieve the Tao, but it can also pull you into hell and sink forever. Fortune and misfortune are reversed, and it's only in the ingenuity of one's heart. This is a dangerous test for me." Ascetic Duda couldn't bear to see it. It was Zhu Mei who persuaded him. If it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, you can't escape it. This treasure is determined by the heavens. It can be seen that my martial nephew has already been involved in this tribulation. This treasure is just a sign. If there is trouble in the future, we will do our best to protect it. Someone is coming. Let's hide at the side first." Ascetic Duda activated the invisible sword escape and hid the 3 of them. Not long after, 2 sword lights descended. One was the famous individual celestial He Huanzhong from the side sect, and the other was the seventh disciple of Xianyuan the Great, Merciless Mosh. The two looked at the remains of the battlefield below. Merciless Mosh couldn't help but gnash his teeth and said, "That old devil River Styx killed my honored master, and I have an irreconcilable grudge against him. Originally, I thought that his magic was powerful and his cultivation was profound, so I wanted to secretly find his flaws. I wanted to kill his disciples or harm the people he cares about. I wanted to ruin something big for him so that I could avenge my honored master. It's a pity that the old devil is truly inhumane. He takes pleasure in toying with the masses. A few days ago, we saw his martial nephew. He must be the disciple of his archenemy. I wanted to kill them and frame the old devil, but he played with them like this. I'm afraid he doesn't care about this. If I were to take action, I'm afraid he would be happy to see me. If this goes on, when will we be able to avenge him?" Chapter 549. Ascetic Duda, who was invisible at the side, said, "This person is also sinful and has done many evil things. Unfortunately, his time has not come and he cannot be killed. However, River Styx is not someone easy to deal with. If he continues like this, he will meet his doom sooner or later." However, he suddenly heard a voice in his heart. "My friend is right. River Styx will let him meet his doom now." A voice suddenly came from the ground, "So there is still a dead remnant here. I am a kindest. I will send you to reunite with your master now." River Styx was thousands of miles away. He followed the aura and sent a strand of skyscraping devils thought over. He attached it to his voice. The moment the two heretics heard it, he immediately followed the skyscraping devil's sense and absorbed their blood. After River Styx became a skyscraping devil, he placed a curse in his name. As long as there was no formation like the yin and yang dust formation to conceal his name, he would sense the skyscraping devil when he called out River Styx's name. Even a master like ascetic Duda accidentally fell for it. He knew everything they said. Trash like Merciless Mosh would die from the devil's sense if he cursed him. He did not care about them at all. There were always people who scolded him in this world, but River Styx never cared. He would pinch one whenever he was free and curse them to death. He could also absorb their blood to nourish the celestial demon diagram for fun. In these few days, he had already killed 5 people like this. Including the 2 today, he had 7, which was an auspicious number. However, he did not know when someone would realize this and address him as the mysterious man or the one whose name cannot be uttered. He must have appeared in front of ascetic Duda once today, so it would not be long before that happened. Of course, what River Styx would not say was that now that his skyscraping devil's primordial spirit was at the primary level, anyone below the level of divine immortal would sense the skyscraping devil in the celestial demon diagram when he called out his name. He had no choice but to say it. Whether it was real or fake, it was also fun. His free-form incarnation could not create joy, so he used the joy of all living beings as joy. Even though River Styx did not restrict him from creating joy, the style of free-form incarnation was still affected. Ku Xn Duda, who was hiding at the side, smiled bitterly and shook his head. The 3 of them did not say another word and turned into conveyance lights and headed towards the East Sea. River Styx had already landed in the city of Chengdu in the center of Sichuan. Another 90,000 miles to the west was the Great Snow Mountain Plateau, the place where the demons of West Kunlun hid. Since ancient times, the center of Sichuan had beautiful mountains and beautiful scenery. The leader of the right path, Amei, the Qingchang sect, and even the divine Nun Yutan lived in seclusion. Moreover, there were many spiritual mountains and blessed lands. Since the Song dynasty, Sichuan had the highest number of immortals. It was not without reason that strange people and strange things appeared frequently. When River Styx landed in Chengdu City, he suddenly had a thought, as the Sky Devil, I can sense all living beings. However, I have always been high above and was not affected by the thoughts of the living beings. Why don't I mix in with the living beings today? I can sense the pain and happiness of the living beings. He abandoned his original appearance of a young man in black and transformed into an old Taoist in ragged clothes. He walked along the street barefooted. Chengdu Prefecture was the capital of Sichuan Prefecture, so it had all kinds of prosperous things. The underworld river flowed through the people coming and going. There were people dressed in rich clothes, scholars in green robes, and even two people with supernatural power. However, he acted according to his nature, and in the end, he gradually merged with the poor people and gradually separated from the people dressed in clean clothes. In the beginning, he could still see a sense of pride. Even though his clothes were ragged, he still had a bearing and was extraordinary. Later on, as he sensed more and more people's hearts, his temperament became ordinary. His old eyes seemed to be blurred and no longer had the vigor from before. However, he gradually became more in tune with the poor people around him and no longer saw him as a strange person. Stepping on the muddy water and dripping with mud, River Styx followed him to the harbor. Along the way, he did a few fortune-telling businesses. Now that he was like this, naturally, he would not attract rich people like Qiao Si. Most of them were old women who worked and were only worth a few copper coins. Along the way, he even predicted someone's fate. He lost his husband when he was middle-aged and his son when he was old. In winter, he had to wash clothes for others. Rheumatism seeped into his bones. 3 years later, he would feel pain for 4 hours every time it was wet. 70% of the family's land was used to grow vegetables. At the end of the year, he had to repay his debts. He died of poverty and sickness. He was almost chased and beaten. Although he did not predict poverty and sickness or starvation to death, there were still people who gave him money out of kindness or sincerity. Later, River Styx learned his lesson. Every time, he would ask for money first. Only then would he predict someone's fate. He was also a fortune teller based on his ability. How could he let someone else accept it for nothing? This bit of money was not even enough to stay in a proper guest room. Fortunately, there were many people like him. There was a place on the pier where one could stay for a night for 5 copper coins. It was a shack, barely able to block some of the wind. Coming and going, there were also some prostitutes doing business. They would pull the laborers to the side, and with a little cover, they would be able to make a living. Now, wherever River Styx was, his primordial spirit could sense the changes in people's hearts within a radius of 10,000 miles. The celestial demon diagram covered almost the entire world. The human heart was complicated and full of desires and delusions. What had he not seen before? But to truly be in this lowly place of the human world, to feel the joys and sorrows of the human world, was something that he had never experienced before. The heavenly demon's primordial spirit was like a mirror. It faithfully reflected the thoughts of everyone around it. A prostitute beside him was thinking about a child she once had. She had left him at the entrance of a charity hall in Chengdu. She missed him very much. Looking at her wrinkled face and yellowed teeth, it was hard to imagine that she was only 30 years old. While she was doing her business, she could occasionally imagine how her child was living. The most wonderful thing she imagined was that a rich family would take her in as a child. The most daring thing she imagined was that she would have a childless couple. When she thought about this, she forgot about this idea. It was as if she did not even dare to think about it. As for finding her own child, she did not dare to think about it. Even though the heavenly demon had slightly stirred up the delusion in her heart, this thought had never truly occupied her mind. River Styx silently thought about this woman's closest blood relation. The divination showed that it was in the mass grave outside the city. The laborer beside him was thinking about how to repay his debt. He had buried his wife before the new year, and now he still owed the elder brother society. He was a brother who had joined the society, so he could owe them until now. However, he still had to pay 1/3 of his daily wages to the small leader, but in reality, he had to pay half. Otherwise, he would be assigned to the most tiring work. As for the outsiders who did not join the society, he still had a way to earn money, which was to beat up those who did not join the society and try to steal their business. Those who were ruthless and evil were looked upon favorably. Those who joined the society's thugs could earn an extra 2 strings of money every month. However, beating up people required a lot of effort. If they did not kill anyone, they would be laughed at. Originally, He did not like to do such cruel things. However, if he continued to owe them, his wages would not even be enough to pay the interest. Thinking of this, the laborer thought it was better to be more ruthless. Otherwise, he would not be able to repay the money. It was the first time he had become a disciple of the elder brother. If he could appear to be ruthless, he would be valued, and his settlement allowance would be 10 strings of money. The sailors on the ship, the boat haulers, the most ordinary farmers, the tenant farmers. The thoughts of countless people were reflected in the heavenly demon's primordial spirit and reflected in River Styx's heart lake. The heavenly demon does not use his own musical instruments to materialize. Instead, he uses the lower heaven to materialize his own pleasures and games. This is why it is called free form. At this moment, the heavenly demon sensed all living beings, but he did not hear about the pleasures of all living beings. There were only all kinds of suffering, all kinds of negative karma, and the struggles of billions of living beings in the Middle Earth, the Ming Dynasty, the West region, the Southern barbarians, and all the other countries. The endless distracting thoughts of all living beings were first of all suffering. All thoughts of sadness, resentment, hatred, and anger were transformed into all kinds of wishes. So, the heavenly demon also has wishes. River Styx was speechless. The heavenly demon uses the lower heaven to materialize his own pleasures and games. This is why it is called free form. However, the human world is filled with resentment, worry, bitterness, and sorrow. This kind of wish power can be used by the gods and devils, and the heavenly demon that I have refined can use it. However, my heavenly demon's primordial spirit cannot use it. The pure power of thought should be born under the dharma of perfection, tranquility, and joy. Therefore, the power of thought used by the Buddhist sect should be merciful and beautiful wishes. As expected, the Buddha and the devil share the same thoughts. The relationship between the devil and Buddha is deeper than I thought. River Styx looked at the thoughts of all living beings reflected in the heavenly demon's primordial spirit and said quietly, "How can the celestial beings save the Ming Dynasty? If I don't turn the world upside down, how can I save all of you? If I turn the world upside down, what's the use of saving all of you? The mercy of the devil is to give all of you one last way out when there is no other way out." River Styx flicked his finger in the celestial demon drawing. Suddenly, a formation in the 9 heavens and 10 earths turned into an illusory world. It evolved into countless peaceful and prosperous worlds. This world was formed by River Styx. All the laws came from River Styx. It was the happiest and most peaceful world that River Styx could create. It was a world where River Styx could create a carefree and worry-free world. After River Styx finished creating this world, he used the immeasurable thoughts and demons in the celestial demon drawing as a supplement. He forcefully created this world that was formed by the formation. Although it was just a realm of thoughts formed by the power of thought, this place could accommodate countless souls. When their lifespans were exhausted, they would enter the cycle of reincarnation. River Styx's clear voice echoed in the void. Chapter 550. After staying in Chengdu for a day, River Styx kept the celestial demon drawing and headed for the Great Snow Mountain by the river. She exerted the sky demon meditation technique to the extreme and sensed the secrets of the people's hearts on the Kangbati horse road. In a flash, she had already descended into the world as a sky demon from the souls and thoughts of the traveling merchants. The border of western Sichuan was the boundary between the Great Snow Mountain Plateau and the Sichuan Basin. The mountains and rivers here were towering, and the dangerous peaks of the Spirit Mountains could easily reach hundreds of thousands of meters. They were almost touching the boundary between the spiritual celestial realm and the human realm of the land. There were only countless star worlds in between that existed in the void here. If one stood on the peak of a dangerous mountain like Tangula, it was almost within reach. She could pluck the stars with her hands. The Great Snow Mountain was made up of 3 parts. One was the Tibetan Plateau, where the Buddhist esoteric sect gathered. The other was the Bon sect of the Devil sect. The relationship between them was so complicated that it could not be explained with just a few words. In the eyes of the Buddhist Zen of the mystic door of the Middle Earth, the esoteric sect could be classified as an unorthodox sect. Although their achievements were mediocre and their foundations were mixed, they were still cultivators. The Bon sect was directly condemned as a devil sect and belonged to the list of demons who subdued demons. The second part was the Great Snow Mountain at the border. It was rarely visited by humans and was covered by the Black Ice River all year round. From time to time, the Nine Heavens astral wind and Xianming water would wreak havoc. The environment was very harsh. Even cultivators did not like to build a cave abode here. Other than a few special products, heavenly treasures and spiritual medicines were not produced here. It could be said to be a desolate and barren land. The third part was the devil hideout of West Kunlun. This place was connected to the main vein of Kunlun. There were barbarian and savage tribes living here. It was connected to the sky above and the earth below. The vitality here was extremely pure. It was a land full of heavenly treasures and spiritual medicines. However, the natural environment was harsh and the population was sparse. Other than a few old monsters with profound supernatural power, there were only a few old demons who had been in seclusion for many years who cultivated here. Old Man Blood God of Stone God Palace, Old Demon Iron City of Mount Iron City, Old Man Corpse Pie of Azura Palace, Old Demon Red Lotus of the Sea of Constellations, and so on were all cultivating here. As River Styx ventured deeper into the Great Snowy Mountain, he naturally got closer to these two forces. One of them was a great supplement for the deity and demon diagram, and the other was a target for the Battle of the Great Tao. In the future, he would have to clean up and control them. The identity of River Styx had done more good deeds before, and he was loved and respected by the people here. If the news of his arrival were to spread, it would easily cause some misunderstandings with the Tantric Buddhism sect and the demon sect. This wasn't easy to explain. If there was even the slightest bit of friction, there would probably be a bloody calamity here, countless deaths and injuries. River Styx was a kind person. He did not want this misunderstanding and some rumors in Liaodong to lead to an unmanageable outcome. Therefore, it was better to hide his identity. Fortunately, there were countless ghosts in the deity and demon diagram, and each of them had an identity. River Styx made the heavenly demonic corpses revert to their original forms, and each of them was dressed as a Taoist cultivator. Among them were the Sea King rogue immortals that Shun Ong killed, the demonic Tao demons that River Styx had set up formations to lure and kill, and even some Tantric Buddhism sect heretics and heretical sects that River Styx had killed since he came to Middle-earth. These deity and demon incarnations reverted to the appearance they had when they were alive. Other than the explosive increase in their supernatural powers, their memories and powers from when they were alive were not the least bit lacking. When used against enemies, it was not difficult for them to make him look like a living person. If they were willing to use their fundamental heavenly demonic incarnation, the heavenly demonic magic power had other unpredictable supernatural powers, and the most amazing thing was that they could reverse the heavenly mysteries. Those who were not as skilled as River Styx would not be able to calculate the relationship between them. As River Styx thought about this, he opened the deity and demon diagram and chose from the deity and demon incarnations that had lifelike faces. Excluding the overseas Taoist cultivators, the only unfamiliar faces in the Great Snow Mountain were the ones who had killed Su On Yuan the Great and the demonic Tao demons that had been refined to death. Then, excluding a few who had an inconvenient identity, were disciples of Su On Yuan the Great, or had some reputation in the demonic Tao and were too conspicuous. The remaining Taoist cultivators would be able to choose those who had sufficient cultivation and status, but were not conspicuous and had some extraordinary supernatural powers that could be accepted by the Taoist cultivators of the Great Snow Mountain. Under such complicated conditions, even though River Styx had killed many people and was stained with the blood of the demonic Tao demons, there were only 5 suitable candidates. The first was the abandoned disciples of the Heaven Obscenity cult. Among them, Supreme Ashbone, Supreme Tiger, and the others had extraordinary cultivation. Their master was the Heaven Obscenity cult leader who had died in a calamity. The mystic scripture that they cultivated was also extraordinary. Even though they had some karma with the demonic corpse valley, the demonic corpse would only appear 20 years later. Together, they were considered suitable candidates. The second was a rogue cultivator from the West Kunlun sect, Xiao Cheng. This person had once joined the Lianshan cult, but because he had done too many evil deeds, he was afraid of Patriarch Lianshan's punishment, so he broke the door and escaped. In the beginning, he only cultivated some unorthodox spells. After he joined the Lianshan cult, he cultivated the magic in the Mystic Demon 3 Ginseng Divine Office Supplement. Fortunately, this person was familiar with the cultivation method that he cultivated, river sticks. His karma was related to Great Master Lianshan, who was also related to Chenong, so he could be considered as another suitable candidate. The third and fourth were the disciples of Xianyuan the Great, or the Venerable Poisonous Dragon. Their master had already been sent into the map by river sticks. Their karma was clean, but it was hard to explain how they survived. They could be considered as the second and third suitable candidates. The last one was a rogue cultivator from the unorthodox sect, Yuan Su. This person was quite capable, but he was not famous. He could be considered as one of the hidden old demons in the South Sea. His mana was not below that of the green-robed elder, but he did not have a proper inheritance. The fundamental Tao technique that he cultivated was ordinary, but he had a unique spell that was quite extraordinary. It was called the Sky Demon Secret Script. It was a rare magic of the free-form incarnation, the Heavenly Soul Demon Secret Script. It could refine a soul into a demon, cut off a strand of one's own soul's obsession, and plant it into a demon of the unorthodox path. Using this spell, one could pollute other people's treasured weapons and cultivate various kinds of faceless sky demons. The supernatural power that he displayed was extraordinary. Fortunately, this person's spell was similar to the sky demon path that River Styx cultivated, and his supernatural power was powerful. With this identity, his mana would have more freedom. These 5 people each had their own advantages. As for how to choose, it was up to River Styx to decide. After thinking about it again and again, River Styx still felt that the other 4 identities had their own origins. Although they were convenient, it was still quite troublesome to hide their karma. If he acted based on this, he would be bound by the original body's karma. Only the last one, although it was not convenient, had more room to be used, and it would be easier to kill people. With a shake of the celestial demon diagram, Yuan Su's faceless sky demon descended and transformed into a primordial spirit incarnation that draped over his body. The sky demon primordial spirit turned, and endless memories surged into his brain. They were easily suppressed by the primordial spirit and transformed into a shapeless imprint. Immediately, Yuan Su's cultivation of the Heavenly Soul Demon Secret Script that he could not cultivate successfully was achieved. River Styx shouted, and countless green flames flew out of his 7 orifices. They transformed into shooting stars that danced around him. He himself also transformed into a strange-looking Taoist. These green flames were transformed from demons, and their nature was strange. They were like sentient beings and could be refined into all kinds of demons. When the cultivation of the Heavenly Soul Demon Secret Script was achieved, there were 300 to 400 green flames, and they were quite powerful. However, River Styx did not care about these. He absorbed countless demons of distracting thoughts from the celestial demon diagram. After a few swallowing and spitting, he multiplied the number of green fire demons by a few times. He refined them into thousands of balls and scattered them. They attached themselves to the glaciers of the great snow mountain that had accumulated for thousands of years under his feet. Immediately, an endless amount of ice essence gathered and transformed into a strange insect that was formed from cold air. It had 8 eyes and 6 legs, and it looked like a locust. It was about the size of a wine cup, and it looked like a brilliant green flame. It looked as if it was forged from black ice, and it was the image of an ancient variant of the frost moth. Chapter 551. Originally, The rogue cultivator Yuan Su was considered to have some tricks among the rogue cultivators with his Du Tian soul-severing demonic spell. He planted his soul in the bodies of demonic beasts, insects, and vengeful spirits, and the mutated demon was rather powerful. Even in River Styx's formless and blood river formation, he still managed to persevere to the end. If it wasn't for the fact that his spells were restrained by the sky demon and his mana was not very impure, he might not have been taken down. Originally, after this spell cultivated the mutated demon and scattered it, the demon would naturally find nearby humans and beasts with flesh and blood to possess them. They would then transform into various flying zombies and bewitching creatures. They could then arrange a formation, cast spells, and supply devil's chi. However, the spell that Yuan Su relied on could never reach the level of River Styx, which absorbed the 10,000-year glacier and transformed it into the frost moth. The 10,000-year glacier was a layer of hard ice formed by the mother of Xianin wind. It was countless times harder than fine iron. Even the talismans of Taoist cultivators could not break it easily. River Styx could transform this kind of mutated material into the body of the demon. It could restrain normal fire, and it was difficult for swords, knives, and spells to damage it. Not to mention that River Styx used the distracting thoughts of the masses to transform them into demons. He used the Du Tian soul-severing demonic spell to activate the Du Tian soul-severing demonic spell to transform them into mutated demons. They were unpredictable and had a subtle demonic thought. They were the most cunning and difficult to deal with. They had the battle wisdom of the sky demon. When Yuan Su was at his peak, he only cultivated over 100 mutated demons. The quality was even more varied. Some were refined from vengeful spirits, and some were transformed from the flesh and blood of sea beasts and demonic birds. Their intelligence was muddled. Although they were violent and bloodthirsty, their intelligence was worse than that of a normal person. They were not suitable to be used in a battle with Taoist cultivators. Their quality was far worse than River Styx's. That was why Mingi had some contempt and underestimated this spell. This time, Mingi had personally refined it, using the sky demon power as the foundation to reconstruct this spell. With just a little practice, he was aware of the potential of this spell. Compared to the ability of the sky demon to destroy people's cultivation in secret, this kind of cultivated demon head had another advantage when it came to frontal attacks and put people to death in a dignified manner. Just like the cold moth that was flying around River Styx's body that had transformed into thousands of blue-green flames. These mutated demons used the 10,000-year glacier as their shells. Their bodies were harder than fine iron and could not be harmed by ordinary spells. They were even more powerful than the 100-venom golden silkworm of the Green Robe Patriarch. At least, they could not be restrained by ordinary true fire or magic power that could destroy demons. Even if a Taoist cultivator's flying sword was used to destroy them, if it were not for the 7th cultivator of true virtues and Nanming Leaf Fire's high-grade flying swords, they would not be able to kill one of them. Moreover, these demons' bodies were just shells made of ice. Even if their bodies were broken, as long as the demon's primordial spirit was not destroyed, River Styx could use his magic power to absorb the Xianming true water from heaven and earth to restore himself in a few breaths. The most frightening thing was that, with the help of the 9 bends yellow river formation that Chun Ong had set up with the Xianming true water, the cold moth was almost indestructible by borrowing the power of the Xianming true water. Without breaking the outer shell of the 10,000-year glacier, one could forget about taking the demon's primordial spirit inside. Even a flying sword as sharp as the green and purple dual swords would not be able to harm the cold moth with the help of the 9 bends yellow river formation that was set up with the Xianming true water. Furthermore, these demons that had transformed into cold moths still had a bloodthirsty nature. When these cold moths smelled the aura of living beings, they would attach themselves to them. They carried a destructive power, and when they attached themselves to someone, there would be an extremely cold aura that could turn a person's bones and flesh into ashes. Moreover, the demons inside had the ability to devour blood essence and burn souls. Even an ordinary Taoist cultivator would not be able to escape the wrath of these two cold moths. Tens of thousands of cold moths flickered around River Styx's body. They continuously devoured the cold aura of the glacier around them to strengthen their shell made of glacier. On top of them, the embryonic forms of even more demons were slowly born. They devoured the distracting thoughts in the celestial demon diagram and grew stronger. When they matured, they fell from the celestial demon diagram, rolled on the glacier of the Great Snow Mountain, and turned into a cold moth. This huge group of vicious creatures continued to expand. These cold moths were essentially an extremely cold aura. Tens of thousands of different species formed from the Xianming true water could evolve according to the formation. River Styx used the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation and the Free Transformation Heavenly Demon Formation in the Celestial Demon Diagram to slowly deduce a few variations of the formation. These cold moths gathered together and contributed the cold aura and the primordial spirit of the different species of demons. They combined to form a prehistoric species with 6 heads and 9 bodies, the 10,000-year-old cold moths. This was one of the variations. The jade ring that was intertwined with azure and blue light was another. Putting aside the ferocious might of the 10,000-year-old cold moths, the jade ring River Styx, named the Xianming Two Realms Ring. Not only did it have the ability to break through the void and move freely, it also had an innate cold power. It could release ice, soul divine light, and divine thunder. Its power was not to be underestimated. River Styx tried out the identity of Yuan Su. Fortunately, this was the only ability that he could be praised for. After practicing for a few days, he was already very proficient. Not only was his foundation perfectly deduced by River Styx, but it was also a level higher. Under the situation where he did not use obvious abilities such as the Blood River Mana and the Sky Mana, River Styx could unleash 60% of his power. It was not a problem for him to fight against the group of old demons in West Kunlun. Furthermore, with the Du Tian Soul severing demonic dissolving script, others could only say that Yuan Su had hidden himself very well. When he used such a powerful spell in a battle, he only had a slight taste of it. They would not suspect that River Styx had taken over his identity. In the end, after eliminating the traces in the Tianji, the identity of River Styx was more or less completed. The next step was to cover up the traces of Yuan Su's accident. Yuan Su did not have many close friends. He did not inform anyone when he went to the South Sea to obtain the inheritance of the Sky Demon. In this case, River Styx only needed to have an accident in this Great Snow Mountain again. The Great Snow Mountain at the border of western Sichuan was bitterly cold all year round. The strong wind was fierce, and there was a hidden freezing power. Although it was not as suitable as the North Sea or the North Sea for cultivating the Xianming water, it was still a good place for cultivation. After a few days, River Styx found the main peak of Beinhar Mountain. The glacier here was thousands of feet thick. It was formed by the combination of the mother of Xianin wind and the 10,000-year-old cold moths. The main glacier was from the ancient cold underworld era. In the ice, there were ancient ferocious beasts, antiques, and even some self-sealed cultivators of the 3 sovereigns. There were all kinds of monsters. It was not strange for anything to break out of the ice. With the suction force of the cold moths, River Styx drilled a hole in one of the glaciers. It went straight to the belly of the glacier. He hid in the hole and quietly operated his mana to reproduce the cold moths transformed by the demon. In just a few days, the hole that River Styx drilled was sealed by the cold moths. The whole glacier became one again, as if it had not changed for thousands of years. In the belly of the glacier, a type of demon gradually reproduced. Every day, thousands of demons would be born from the picture of gods and demons. After obtaining the body of the cold moths, they would attach themselves to the hole in the belly of the glacier and absorb the essence of the cold moths. After a few months, the hole in the belly of the glacier had expanded to the size of a few miles. The thickness of the ice was only half of its original thickness. The cold moths had also reproduced to millions of them. Millions of cold moths suddenly soared up like a boundless sea of stars. Specks of dark blue starlight were dazzling, and their destructive power was unimaginable. These countless cold moths gathered together and suddenly turned into a cold sparrow. As soon as it appeared, it froze the glacier by 30%. The cold sparrow flew into the arms of River Styx, who was meditating on the icicle. Then, it turned into an ice ring made of blue and blue. Suddenly, two cold lights of two colors shone from the depths of the glacier, illuminating the entire sky. The blue and silver lights and the blue and silver lights alternated, and the light shot up to the nine heavens. This was River Styx's intentional indulgence. It startled countless cultivators in the Great Snow Mountain. Many sword beams and conveyances appeared on the nearby, snow-capped mountains. Some paused for a moment and then returned to the snow-capped mountains to hide. Some fled far away, not wanting to get involved in these troubles. However, most of them still headed toward the glacier where River Styx was. There were about a dozen of them scattered around. The glacier that River Styx chose was not far from Small Chombai Mountain and Qingluo Valley. This startled two female cultivators who had been meditating for many years. One of them was sitting stiffly in a deep valley under the main peak of Small Chombai Mountain in the Great Snow Mountain. She did not want to get involved in this matter, but she secretly calculated that the place where the strange light appeared should be the birth of a rare treasure. It was fated with the precious treasure that was formed from the essence of 10,000 years of ice and snow in her hands. This person's problem was her stiffened body. Regardless of whether it was a treasure of pure yang or an item of extreme yin, they could all be of help. Originally, she heard from her good friend, Master Yuqing, that as long as she concentrated on her cultivation, there would be someone who would help her in the future. However, this female cultivator was also an unyielding person when she was young. If there was any other way, she would not be willing to rely on the mystic door or anyone else. Chapter 552. The other one was the master of the 8 demons of Western Sichuan, Divine Hand Bikawei Fengyang. She was originally the disciple of Fairy Guangming Nun, but she betrayed her sect and hurt her master. She did evil and gathered a group of devil disciples to set up a residence at Qingluo Mountain. Because she hid a box of tomes of arcane left by Guang Chengzi, she had been practicing magic in the valley recently. She wanted to break the jade box and take out the tomes of arcane. Unexpectedly, a strange light flashed on a snowy peak in the distance. She knew that a rare treasure was born. She secretly calculated and could only figure out that it was a treasure formed by the collection of ancient cold glaciers. Its power was not to be underestimated. She could not hold back and brought 6 of the 8 demons to the peak where the strange light flashed. The 8 demons of Qingluo Valley had many subordinates and were afraid of divine Nun Utton, who was also cultivating in the Great Snow Mountain. So she brought her most capable people and let the 2 barbarian monks Fanzue Jiayin and Kain Shabu from the Red Temple to explore the way. She and Wei Fengyang secretly lay in ambush nearby, together with a disciple of venerable poisonous dragon who died tragically overseas, Yuda, who wanted to become Wei Fengyang's disciple to become the 9th demon. They prepared to steal the treasure and kill. They did not know that there was an ancestor of the world of treasure stealing and killing buried under the ground. They still secretly cast magic to ambush, and at the same time, they were vigilant of Divine Nun Utton, who was nowhere to be found. Divine Nun Utton had long predicted that the strange light was not a treasure, but a powerful spell cultivated by the unorthodox rogue cultivator Yuan Su. He wanted to cultivate an unusual phenomenon when he came out of seclusion. Although she was secretly worried that there would be people from the unorthodox sects who would walk the path of evil, she still watched from afar to see if she could find an opportunity to guide him to the right path. Therefore, the 8 demons' worries were actually just overthinking, and there was no possibility that it would come true. This time, the appearance of Mingi's incarnation shocked many people. However, only maiden goddess Dangbagu discovered that the source of the strange light was under the vast ice field in the ancient cold river. Even though the others could see through this, they could do nothing about this layer of ice. They could only use their true fire treasured weapons to attack and refine it day and night. They did not have Mingi's ability, so they could not break through such a thick layer of ice even after a few years. Only this maiden goddess had used the penetrating needle to break through the top of Yujing Lake of Small Changbai Mountain. She went down 73,000 feet and collected 10,000 years of snow and ice. She used her mana to condense it into a snow pearl. It was a rare treasure among unorthodox sects to cultivate incarnation and the second primordial spirit. It was related to her in the future. This maiden primordial Dang did not need to, so primordial spirit, so she could break through. Dang Bagu knew that she was now in a primordial spirit form and could not defend against the evil sect's vicious tricks. Therefore, she did not show any movement on the surface and secretly used the penetrating needle to break through the side of the glacier. Under the disguise of spells, she took a detour and entered the glacier. The tunnel was round like a barrel. The four walls of the ice were clear and smooth. It went straight down without any twisting or turning. It only took a turn at the most crucial point and went straight into the center of the glacier. The tunnel was extremely cold, and the cold air condensed like frost. Even Dang Bagu's primordial spirit was almost frozen. Her primordial spirit used the snow pearl to protect herself. After a while, light suddenly appeared in front of her. She turned around and found herself in a huge cave that looked like a crystal palace. The blue and green light came from the top of an icicle in the middle of the cave. The icicle was only 10 feet wide, and a young cultivator in feather robe and star crown was sitting on it. Dang Bagu looked carefully and saw an ice ring in the man's hand. It seemed to be the magic weapon that caused the strange light. However, she saw that the man had an extraordinary appearance and looked very real. She did not know if he was dead or alive, so she did not dare to act rashly. On top of the glacier, Wei Fengyang was observing with her Dharma eyes. Suddenly, she cried out in shock, "Not good! Someone is one step ahead of us." Next to her, Great Devil Huang Liang said in disbelief, "Is it that old nun Yutan?" Wei Fengyang shook her head and said, "This man broke through the ice layer from the side and sneaked into the cave. He must not have a strong magic power. If that old nun Yutan is doing something, why would she be so cautious? So what if she broke through the ice layer? Is she afraid that we will rob her? I think she just has some special tricks." Great Devil Huang Liang said, "Master, we have to lie in ambush at the entrance of the cave and wait for that man to come out." Wei Fengyang sneered and said, "You're too petty. I've already guessed who this man is. I heard that the goddess of calamity, Dang Bagu, had a strange treasure, the earth-piercing divine needle, which is the best at opening up the veins of the earth. It was said that she suffered a fire deviation when she was cultivating and her corporeal body died. This time, her primordial spirit must have come here to search for the treasure and try to dissolve her corporeal body." Great Devil Huang Liang was pleasantly surprised and said, "If that's the case, there will be many spells that can restrain her, and it won't be difficult to capture her primordial spirit. Even if we can't get that magical treasure, it will be a great harvest if we can get her primordial spirit." Wei Fengyang sneered and did not answer, but she had already moved. She asked 5 devils and 6 devils to stay where they were to attract the attention of others, while she brought the great devil, second devil, third devil, and fourth devil to the entrance of the cave that Dang Bagu had broken through. Wei Fengyang's skill was superb, so even though Dang Bagu sensed that someone had broken through the restriction, she did not know who it was. But she also knew that it was not good, so she came before River Styx and bowed, saying, "Senior, Dang Bagu has no intention of disturbing your remains. It's just that my corporeal body has suffered a calamity and is trapped like a zombie. I wish to obtain a treasure to melt my corporeal body. If this treasure is useful, I will definitely help Senior accumulate 50,000 external merits as repayment. If this treasure is useless, I will definitely return it. Congratulations, Dang Bagu." Initially, she suspected that the man in the feather robe and star crown was a living senior who had gone into seclusion. But now that she was right in front of her, she still could not sense River Styx's breath. Only then did she confirm that this was only a shedding body. How could she have imagined that there was an existence like River Styx in this world that was deliberately playing tricks on her? Just as Dangbagu was about to remove the jade bangle from River Styx's hand, she was shocked to see that the jade bangle suddenly turned into a light and transformed into the Dharma form of a 10,000-year-old ice dragon. The shadow of a giant beast with 6 heads, 9 bodies, and 48 feet howled as it rose into the air. It transformed into a dark ice Dharma form in front of her and shattered the black light with brute force. Then, it spat out 2 streams of cold air that transformed into the Ice Soul Divine Light and attacked Dangbagu from where she came from. "So it's you." Dangbagu shouted furiously when she saw Wei Fingyang's shadow. Wei Fingyang's attack failed. Even though she was secretly regretful and coveted the spiritual treasure, she still smiled and said, "It's my old friend from the past. Back then, 8th Ant, you broke through the top of Yujing Pool and went down 73,000 feet to obtain the Snow Soul Bead. Because of our many years of friendship, I didn't stop you and entrusted you to take care of my disciples. Why did you let them suffer so much?" Dangbagu said fiercely, "Back then, when I was retrieving the bead, you were already jealous. You used your primordial spirit to destroy the top of the pool and try to harm me in retrieving the divine bead. Now that you know my corporeal body has gone berserk and I'm no longer your opponent, are you here to kill me and use your spear?" Wei Fingyang smiled and said, "I didn't mean that. I just know that 8th Ant's corporeal body is dead and you have no hope of ascending. So, I'm here to talk to you as a matchmaker. You can enjoy the prosperity of the human world and be a pair of celestial companions. Together with your future Taoist companion, we will study in detail the method to save your corporeal body. In the future, there will be hope for you to achieve Tao. Isn't it better than you sitting rigidly in the small Changbai mountain?" Dangbagu sneered. "Who has such a great honor to you? Who dares to scheme against me?" Wei Fingyang said straightforwardly, "This person has a profound cultivation base and has a bright future ahead of him. He's from the same sect as the venerable poisonous dragon. His name is Jacob, the wild devil of the West. He's a good match for you, 8th Ant. As a matchmaker, I don't want anything else from you. Just give me the Snow Soul Bead. It's better than having your primordial spirit burned by the devil fire 1,000 times. If it wasn't for our friendship, how could I let you off so easily?" Chapter 553. 8th Ant Dang called herself the goddess of calamity, so her temper was naturally not good. Now that she was being forced by Madame Wei Fingyang, she even had the thought of perishing together with her. In 8th Ant Dang's eyes, the Western wild devil Jacob was a lowly person. In order to snatch the Snow Soul Pearl from her, he had repeatedly come to make things difficult for her. Last time, she was almost killed by his devil fire, so there was already a deep hatred between them. Madame Wei Fingyang said that the old devil was plotting against her chastity, which made her even angrier. She wanted to fight them to the death, so how could she agree? Even if she had to sacrifice her primordial spirit, she had to use the earth-penetrating god needle to teach her a lesson. She immediately activated the golden light formed by the needle, and a golden needle turned into thousands of tiny specks of light. Madame Wei Fingyang's attention was on 8th Ant Dang, so when she saw her releasing the needle, she immediately cast out a ball of red miasma. Within the miasma, the golden specks formed a constellation of stars. The golden light of the earth-penetrating god needle shot over, but the miasma was as flexible as a brocade. It wrapped around the sharp golden light, and the thousands of golden specks emitted a great force, firmly absorbing the golden light, so it couldn't hurt her at all. 8th Ant Dang, I've been waiting for this. We've known each other for decades, so do you think I don't know what tricks you have? This starry rainbow cloud miasma is made by refining the Miaojiang poison mist miasma with my Miaojiang magic. If a person encounters this kind of poisonous miasma and breathes it in, the poison will attack their heart in a few days, and their entire body will swell up and die. I've even refined it to the point where it can restrain the magic power of cultivators and pollute their magic treasures. I've painstakingly found a magnetic vein and absorbed a lot of magnetic essence in a golden specks. It can also restrain flying needles and refine them into the rainbow cloud miasma. It's the perfect counter to your earth-penetrating god needle. Your needle light is blocked by the miasma and absorbed by the magnetic essence. Let's see what else you can do. You can only struggle. When the four devils at the side saw that their master had seized the enemy's magic art, they shouted in unison and released their flying swords to attack. Four greenish-gray sword lights flew out together and immediately tangled with the snow soul pearl light released by Dangbagu. Dangbagu's primordial spirit was enveloped by a wisp of clear light and emitted a biting cold air, which slightly froze and slowed down the four devil sword lights. However, she still had to divert her attention to defend against Wei Fingyang's attack, so she gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. This scene of noobs pecking at each other made River Styx unable to lift his spirits. His battle of magic was not a scene that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas or destroy the stars and grab the moon. His opponents were all big shots, such as the living Buddha of the Great Snow Mountain, the cult leader of the Western Devil Cult, one of the three great grandmasters of the evil sects, Xianyuan the Great, and even the ancient Hamba. Between them, the Great Formation enveloped thousands of miles, easily opening up two worlds and blending into the void. Between them, there was also the Great Blood River Formation. The Great Heavenly Demon Formation took in the hearts of the people in the land realm, and it was like a god or a devil. The battle of magic was extremely dangerous, and if one was not careful, they could turn a land of thousands of miles into powder. In the vast central plains, wind, earth, water, and fire would erupt at the same time, and billions of lives would be destroyed. Between Dangbagu and Wei Fingyang, the small matter of their daughters pulling each other's hair and tearing each other's faces was nothing to him. In the past, in the battles and disasters on the battlefield, figures of their level were only fit to be cannon fodder when the Godfiend diagrams surged, or when the Red Lotus Hellfire burned. River Styx had killed many people along the way. For example, Elder White Rock had a name, Supreme Tiger Strength, and Supreme Ashbone had a background. Old demons like Yuan Su, who had killed by mistake, were merely mentioned in passing, and most of them did not even have a name. After going through so many storms, River Styx did not even have the interest to lift his eyelids when he saw the battle. He continued to sit with his eyes closed. The two mysterious and underworld rings floated in front of him, protecting Dangbagu. The cold air was restrained, and only a protective light flickered faintly, breaking away some of the magic power that spread towards him. On the other side, Dangbagu only had the body of a primordial spirit, and she could not cultivate the infant primordial spirit to the state where it was full of spirit and energy like a corporeal body like spiritual master Jilu. She could only hold on for a short while, and her spirit showed signs of dissipating. Her solid body slowly became blurry, like a phantom. Even if Dangbagu tried her best to focus, she could not. On the other side, Wei Fingyang's mouth opened slightly, and the decadent voice of the heavenly demon flowed out like a song. Under the harassment of such bewitching magic, her spirit drained even faster. Even though she had the Snow Soul Pearl to dispel the external demons, suppress the distracting thoughts, and condense the primordial spirit with a cold stream, she still could not get rid of the danger of chi deviation. Her primordial spirit was not complete, and she gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. She could only hold on with great effort. Suddenly, a hoarse voice of man behind Wei Fingyang could be heard shouting, "Senior Marshal Sister Wei, I have been in the valley for a long time, but I have not done anything. Let me take down this female god of calamity." Before Wei Fingyang could speak, the great demon behind her scolded, "Master is about to take her down. It's not your turn to snatch the credit." Wei Fingyang did not listen to the great demon's words of jealousy. Instead, she asked softly, "Yuda, do you have the confidence to take her down in one go? If it's just to help, then forget it. I want to take her down in one go, so that she won't destroy the Snow Soul Pearl. This pearl is a treasure that I must get. I can't lose it again." Yuda nodded. I have a gourd of soul-chasing 5 poison red cloud sand that Master left behind. This won't be difficult. Wei Fingyang said decisively. All right then, I'll attack her forcefully for 3/4 of an hour. You strike when the time is right. As soon as she said that, she clasped her hands together, forming dozens of huge thunderballs. They were the dozens of soul-scattering yin thunder that she had painstakingly refined by gathering the yin and yang energy of heaven and earth. She struck them out, and the flickering yin thunder transformed into a ball of thunder essence, attaching itself to the clear light that was supported by the snow soul pearl. Instantly, wind and thunder erupted, and a thunderclap resounded. Dang Bagu's primordial spirit was forcefully shattered. She cried out in pain, and when she reformed her primordial spirit, it was only a blurry shadow that looked like a ghost. A cultivator's primordial spirit actually had yin quality, so it was obvious that it was heavily injured. Just as Dang Bagu reformed her primordial spirit, Yuta seized the opportunity and shot out a handful of red sand, scattering it into the air. Immediately, a large yellow fog and red clouds with the faint sound of thunder and lightning struck towards Dang Bagu's head. Her primordial spirit had yet to recover, so the snow soul pearl could only protect her. She cried out in alarm, and it looked like she was about to die. Unexpectedly, a thin layer of strange light in front of her shot towards the floating ice jade bracelet. Previously, it was protected by the divine light of the snow soul pearl, so it wasn't affected. Now that the soul-scattering red sand was directly hit, it immediately triggered the treasure's counterattack. Immediately, it transformed into countless strange dark blue lights and scattered, and countless cold stars flew out, freezing the poisonous sand completely. From Dang Bagu's perspective, that cold star was a strange insect the size of a thumb. Its body looked as if it was made of black ice, and its abdomen shone with a strange light. The jade bracelet transformed into tens of thousands of strange insect cold stars. Once it was shot out, it was like the light of fireflies blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Its speed was extremely fast. Yuta and the others only saw the strange light in front of them, and their vision was filled with dazzling stars. Suddenly, they felt a bone-chilling cold, and endless starlight gathered towards where they were. In the next moment, they lost consciousness. Only Dang Bagu and Wei Fingyang were quick-witted, and their eyes and hands were sharp. They quickly escaped from the area shrouded by the strange light. They watched as they turned into ice sculptures, and with a slight tremble, their entire bodies turned into ice shards and dissipated. Those strange insects were startled once, and immediately dispersed. They scattered around the cave entrance and attached themselves to the ice walls like inconspicuous decorations. Chapter 554. When River Styx saw that the mysterious and underworld ring was triggered, it counterattacked and froze the people brought by Wei Fingyang to death. However, River Styx did not take it to heart. Yuta was a dead remnant under the unfortunate venerable poisonous dragon. Although he did not have the arrogant thought of avenging his master, and there was no need for River Styx to send the master and disciple back together. Since he was not strong enough, he deserved to die. He was not worthy of the elder ancestor to stop him. As for the 2 women who survived, Wei Fingyang was the one who betrayed and injured her master. Although River Styx did not care about worldly etiquette, he did not have a good impression of such a rebellious disciple. Although 8th Aunt Deng came from an evil sect, she and the old nun Yuching could be said to be clean. They had not done any evil deeds and had good aptitudes. Apart from being a little eccentric, they were not immature. If Chun Ang's true self was here, he would not be stingy to teach them a lesson. Unfortunately, it was River Styx who was here. A normal person would not be able to accept the old monster's benefits and enlightenment. Seeing that the 2 female cultivators were looking at him with shock and doubt in their eyes, River Styx knew that the 2 of them had discovered him. He opened his eyes and circulated his transcendence energy. The cold moth on the ice wall instantly fell back like shooting stars and turned into a strange green light. They merged and turned back into the ring of ice jade and returned to River Styx's hand. River Styx saw the two women's shocked and frightened gazes. He shook his head and smiled. I say, you two little dolls are really interesting. I, the elder ancestor, am alive and well here, but one of you insists on treating me as a senior's remains. The other simply ignores me and wants to kill people under my mysterious and underworld ring. Just now, those few kids accidentally touched the magic treasures. They might as well die for me. People who are as weak as insects should not come out and look for trouble. I'm worried that I'll shock you to death when I sneeze. As River Styx spoke, he shook his body slightly. The thin layer of ice on the surface of his body shattered, and a frightening cold air seeped out from the ice. Even though 8th Aunt Deng and Wei Fingyang were not close, they could still sense the desolate aura of the underworld, which seemed to exterminate all living things. It was like the primordial cold underworld era. When it was absorbed, it was an extremely frightening cold air that froze the three realms. It could easily turn 10,000 miles into the North Pole and return to the desolate ice age of the underworld. Only then did the two of them realize that this person's preposterous words, "I'm afraid of killing myself with a sneeze," were actually not lies. Both of them were first-rate figures in the unorthodox sex. Although people like River Styx could look down on them, they were still outstanding cultivators in this world. 8th Aunt Deng could penetrate the Earth's crust, collect the essence of ice and snow for 10,000 years, and refine the Snow Soul Pearl, a treasure that could cultivate the second primordial spirit. Wei Fingyang could gather the 8 devils, a group of demons and devil disciples, and occupy a blessed land like Mount Qingluo, which even made the strange man Hua Linghun envious. She could even seize the jade box of the Tomes of Arcane from Guangchengzi and build such a huge foundation. How could she be someone ordinary? These two female cultivators were first-rate figures among them. They could already tell that the history of this layer of ice was not much shorter than that of the glacier. They did not expect that there was a real object like the true water of Xianming in the world. They thought that this senior was a figure from before you, the great conquer the flood, at the same time as Emperor Xin Yuan, and could even be traced back to the ancient cultivators of Gong Gong, Zhurong, and Nine Heads. Of course, this was not a big deal. When the ancient zombies Wu Hua father and son were born, they were also fiercely defeated by the leader of the Amei sect. However, this was the ability of Amei. Unorthodox cultivators like 8th Aunt Deng and Wei Fingyang did not have this kind of magnanimity. They were just secretly frightened. For a moment, they were frightened by this scary guess and dared not to act rashly. Wei Fingyang even secretly transmitted her voice to 8th Aunt Deng's ear. "Fellow Taoist Deng, I did wrong earlier. I was blinded for a moment. That's why I said such nonsense. Those rebellious disciples did not know the immensity of heaven and earth and had already suffered a disaster. The background of this person in front of us is not trivial. If we continue to be hostile to each other, I'm afraid the end will not be good. Why don't you let me off this time? When this matter is over, I'll apologize to fellow Taoist." 8th Aunt Deng was even more afraid when she received the voice. Wei Fingyang was flexible. When she could not even protect herself, she could decisively join forces with the enemy. With such magnanimity and decisiveness, it was no wonder that she could build such a huge foundation. 8th Aunt Deng believed that when the two of them joined forces and survived this disaster, she would not hesitate to attack her again. However, 8th Aunt Deng was not a person who was hesitant and could not let go. She immediately replied, "Forget about apologizing. The previous karma cannot be ignored. I can only promise you that I won't make things difficult for you this time. If necessary, I'll definitely join forces with you to fight against this person." Once the two of them had reached an agreement, the hostile atmosphere between them became slightly less tense. It was only then that River Styx spoke. "Are you done talking? If you're done, then put down the treasures. I'm not an unreasonable person. Why would I make things difficult for you just because you've pierced through the ice aperture? One of you died from chi deviation, the other has a mixed foundation. You're both good-for-nothings with no future. Although your looks are not bad, you're already in the prime of your life. Even if the elder ancestor refines souls from others and finds a human cauldron for dual cultivation, he won't be interested in you. River Styx sneered and calculated with his fingers. Only the heavenly book jade box in the little girl's hand is slightly interesting. Unfortunately, the elder ancestor of the 9 heavenly scriptures has learned it before, so there's no need to kill and snatch it for this matter. Of course, if you have the Tao Te Ching incantation that I personally passed down, or the basic orthodoxy of the Emperor of the Upper Realm, then it's a different story. Hee. One of the biggest secrets in Wei Fingyang's heart was suddenly exposed by River Styx. She was so nervous that the mana in her body moved strangely. Although it was not a secret that she had obtained the heavenly book jade box, only a few people in this realm knew about it. It was a very secretive secret. Although she knew that the mighty people would not be interested in the heavenly book jade box, she also knew that treasuring a jade box would cause trouble, so she was still terrified. That was why she never brought the jade box with her. It was only because when the mighty people had designs on the jade box, they did not need to plot against her. They could just leave the Green Conch Valley on their own. However, she also let the 8 demons guard the Green Conch Valley to prevent it from being stolen by some thieves. This kind of arrangement that could prevent villains, but not mighty people, the scheme behind it was self-evident. Unfortunately, she still met Lady Meow and personally sent her to face the tribulation. Although River Styx's words were not pleasant to hear, the two of them still enjoyed it and let down their guard. Although they were still vigilant, they dared to go forward and talk to her. Wei Fingyang was bolder after all. She smiled gently and said, "I don't mean to disturb your rest, Senior. I wonder if you want to continue your isolated cultivation or come out for a walk. I'm not talented, but there's a blessed land nearby. May I invite you to stay there for a few days and see the changes in the human world? It'll be convenient for you to travel." Chapter 555. Before 8th and Deng could think of a way to stop them, they heard the sound of wind and thunder coming from above the ice layer. Someone on the ice layer must have discovered the secret of the ice aperture and was releasing divine thunder to attack the prohibition, with the intention of exploding the glacier to obtain the treasure. When River Styx heard this sound, he laughed and said, "This place is not safe now. If they see us here, they will definitely be troubled." Based on the Patriarch's original intention, he should have fulfilled my fate with them and given them a bloody calamity, River Styx thought to himself. The heavens sent me to this world, not to bring peace to the world, but to bring war to the earth. However, it's been a while since I played this game, and my murderous nature has gradually disappeared. Why don't I change my stance and give them a fundamental great technique to become Buddha and immortal, so that they can ascend to my God-fiend diagram and enjoy boundless bliss? With that thought in mind, River Styx secretly left behind a bit of the heavenly demon's thoughts in the celestial demon diagram. It turned into a box of heavenly tomes and left behind the heavenly tomes that would allow him to cultivate into the heavenly demon's dark demon. He hid it in the ice pillar and waited for River Styx to leave. It would replace the mysterious underworld ring and release a strange blue and green light. He had to attract the attention of the cultivators who came to look for treasures so that the heavenly demon could enlighten them in the future. Meanwhile, River Styx agreed to Wei Feng's mother's invitation and brought Deng Bagu to Qingluo Valley. Initially, 8th and Deng did not want to fall into Wei Fingyang's devilish trap. However, River Styx casually flicked out a streak of Sky Demon's psyche power and transformed it into pure yang. It fixed Deng Bagu's primordial spirit that had gone rigid due to chi of fire deviation, causing her to separate from her physical body for a long time before her cultivation reached a certain level. Moreover, she was severely injured by Wei Fingyang's demonic voice. Not only did her chi of fire deviation not worsen, but it also improved greatly because of this bit of pure yang chi. Under the sudden inspiration, 8th Aunt Deng's spiritual sense sensed that not only was there no danger on this trip, but there was also a chance of escape. It was related to the overall situation of escaping from the disaster in the future. At this time, it was no longer up to 8th Aunt Dang to think. In order to escape from the disaster, she had to try even if it was a tiger's den or a dragon's den. Wei Fengyang brought the rest of the 5 demons, 6 demons, and the others along with Mingyi towards the Green Conch Valley that was hundreds of miles away. This Green Conch Valley was located at the border of the Great Snow Mountain in the western Sichuan Plateau. Although it was adjacent to the Great Snow Mountain, there was not a trace of ice and snow left behind. Instead, the vegetation was flourishing, and it was a scene of a blessed land. Wei Fengyang's sword beam pierced through the sky and covered the distance of a few hundred miles in a blink of an eye. She intentionally used the fastest conveyance light to leave the rest of the devil disciples far behind. She had the intention to test them, hoping to see through Mingyi's background. Unexpectedly, Deng Bigu transformed her primordial spirit into light and followed behind. She revealed a trace of the breath of the Snow Soul Pearl, but Mingyi appeared behind her. Way of 4th, river of, and of Aunt Deng of, two of sty off of Wei Fengyang still had some eyesight and could see some things. She thought to herself, this person's supernatural power is extremely terrifying. When he first appeared, I definitely did not sense any fluctuation of magic power. He can take my life with just a raise of his hand. I'm afraid that when I escaped a few hundred miles away, he was still waiting at the spot of the flying of snow, waiting for me to stop before he teleported over. Such ability, only the mind light shifting technique and divine light shifting technique, the highest shifting technique of Taoism and Buddhism, have a 20% chance. If the few old monsters with the highest cultivation base of Buddhism in the human world were to take action, they should be able to reach this level. With a thought, the shifting technique is like light. However, the feeling this person gave me was that the heart's light shift was not because of his profound psyche power, which was transformed into light to escape. Instead, it came from my thoughts. It was as if when I thought of this person, that thought had guided this person's real body over. This terrifying conjecture caused Wei Fengyang to shudder with fear. If that was really the case, as long as she thought of this person, he would be able to come with a thought. Those who were this person's enemies, if they thought of him, wouldn't they be killed by him? If such supernatural power was extended, even thousands of incarnations would be nothing. Who would be able to fight against him? Wei Fengyang was frightened by her own guess. She dared not have any other thoughts. She already knew that a person like River Styx was not someone that she could control or even influence. Half of her intention to sow discord was immediately dispelled. This kind of person is definitely not someone that I can use. After understanding this, she was much more well-behaved when she came to receive River Styx. When a few people behind arrived, Wei Fengyang stomped her feet. A red cloud lifted the 4 of them into the air and sent them into the demon palace of Green Conch Valley. She then ordered the 7 demons and 8 demons to stay behind to arrange a banquet. She invited River Styx to take the seat of honor. A cloud bed in the hall carried the 3 of them. 8th Aunt Dang and Wei Fengyang stood on both sides of River Styx. River Styx saw that 8th Aunt Dang was absent-minded and seemed to have realized something. He understood but still asked, "You don't look well. Is it because of the old problem of your mortal body going stiff?" 8th Aunt Dang smiled bitterly. "Since Senior knows, I can't hide it from you. It's because of this. In the past, I was rash in my cultivation and triggered the Yin fire in my heart. It burned my mortal body to death. All these years, I relied on the power of the Snow Soul Pearl to eliminate it. I don't know how long I have to endure this hell-like life. Please advise me, Senior." River Styx closed his eyes and calculated silently. "Didn't your good friend Master Yu Qing calculate that we still need the help of the 2 clouds to overcome this disaster?" 8th Aunt Dang did not expect River Styx to know such a secret. She did not dare to hide it and answered, "Even so, it is only the words of Yu Qing. I know that since she entered the orthodox path, her mana has become more profound and her calculation is more accurate than mine. However, I had a spiritual response just now and knew that there might be a chance to turn this disaster around. It should be on Senior. Compared to others, I naturally believe in myself more. After a moment of silence, River Styx said, I do have a way. But your good friend Yu Qing didn't lie to you. 20 years later, the two women of the two clouds will come to save you. The good karma will bear fruit, and it will be your opportunity to enter the orthodox path. Your future will be brighter. If you beg me to help you, there will be twists and turns in this good karma. The old ancestors' karma is huge. You have to think about it carefully. Tell me when you have made up your mind. After that, he ignored Eighth Aunt Deng and turned away Fengyang. You also want me to open Guang Chengzi's heavenly book jade box, right? Wei Fengyang did not dare to hide it. She bowed and said, Senior, please forgive me, but Fengyang has this intention. River Styx only sneered. Do you know that Guangqing heavenly book is not fated with you? The karma has been predetermined. Guangqing Great Sage is such a character. He left the heavenly book jade box to repay the 50 million external merits that he owed the heaven and earth when he ascended 4,000 years ago. What are you? You have no merit in the heaven and earth. If the heavenly book is left to you, is it committing a sin or repaying the merit?